This young delivery guy was on his way home. Then suddenly he got a delivery order from a strange app. He just tapped on the message and what the hell? How did he end up in heaven? What the heck is going on? After a long while, Ha-jun finally came to his senses. He guessed God must have heard his inner prayers and called him up here to grant him superpowers. He thought he was finally done with his grind. He thought his days as a delivery guy were over. But to his surprise, that weird delivery app still popped up with a new order notification, and it even showed him a map. Even though he had no clue what the heck was going on, Ha-jun still tapped, accept. Then he followed the map's directions into a castle he guessed this must be Mount Olympus, the residence of the gods. The directions stopped at a massive wooden door. After Ha-jun knocked, a goddess opened it, looking quite surprised. Seeing a human actually show up on Mount Olympus, she demanded an explanation. Ha-jun pulled out his phone and said he just got an order to deliver up here. Hearing that, she seemed to remember something. She handed him a bottle of holy water, warning him absolutely not to take even a single sip and to be careful to deliver it directly to the recipient. Before he could even react, she slammed the door shut. A moment later, Ha-jun finally realized what was happening. Turns out he wasn't summoned here to get superpowers. He was summoned to be a delivery guy for the gods. He had been daydreaming for nothing. That goddess even treated him like those grumpy, nagging old ladies. Because of that lack of respect, Ha-jun was getting even more annoyed. However, since he had already accepted the order, he had to deliver it. And the goddess had said the recipient was her brother, so he guessed that person must be a god too. Maybe he would grant him superpowers. After following the app's directions for a while, Ha-jun finally reached the recipient's location. He took a risk and walked into the building ahead to deliver the package in person. But just as he stepped through the door, he felt a wave of intense heat radiating from a glowing forge. In front of him was the silhouette of a man who was both bulky and short. It wasn't until he spoke up that the man turned around with a fierce attitude. Ha-jun hadn't expected the other guy to be so aggressive, so he panicked a bit and immediately explained he was just a delivery guy. He wasn't an intruder. At that, the man's attitude softened. "Oh, so you must have the item my sister sent, right?" Ha-jun was surprised to hear that, because the two of them didn't look alike at all. Just then, the short god realized something was off and noticed Ha-jun was just a human, so he immediately flew into a rage, even preparing to pull out his sword to skewer him. Luckily, he had the quick wit to hand over the bottle of holy water, narrowly escaping death. As soon as he saw the holy water, the god was amazed and asked if he had stolen a sip. Of course. Professional integrity wouldn't allow him to do that. After hearing Ha-jun's firm answer, the man looked even more pleased. He revealed that this was actually a type of nectar that could help him possess supernatural power and become a god, and he hadn't even touched a drop. It was only then that Ha-jun realized the use of this yellow liquid that looked like apple juice. Just one single drop and he could have quit his life as a delivery guy and become the hunter he had always dreamed of. But while he was still stunned and hadn't reacted yet, that short god quickly snatched the bottle of nectar and gulped it all down, not leaving a single drop for poor Ha-jun. After savoring the sweet taste of the nectar, the god seemed extremely satisfied. He turned to him and expressed that he really liked Ha-jun's honesty. "I actually quite like you, kid. I am Hephaestus, and you are..." I'm Lee Ha-jun." "Ha-jun, is it? What a unique name. Anyway, thank you very much for today. Now that I've quenched my thirst with that delicious nectar, I suppose I should get back to work." Right then, Ha-jun was like, "Wait, hello, old man. You haven't paid me the delivery fee yet. Are you trying to scam me?" Finally, he gathered the courage to ask for the delivery fee, but the man said he had already paid him in full. Just at that moment, he got a notification on his phone. It turned out the strange app had sent a message. By the time Ha-jun got home, he still couldn't process the mountain of information from today, but one thing was certain. Everything that happened wasn't a dream. Thinking back to the moment before, he only remembered being surrounded by strange beams of light and suddenly appearing back on Earth. When he got home, a mysterious notification board appeared before him. He guessed the points on the board were his delivery pay for the day. But wait, how are you supposed to use this? Why didn't that short god just pay cash or let him swipe a card? Besides, he didn't want to get paid in these points. He only had one small wish for the guy to turn him into the world's strongest S-rank dungeon hunter. Was that too much to ask, just as he was wondering how to use the points? The app's notification board suggested he could exchange points for items in the shop. Although he didn't fully understand it, he tried tapping Browse Shop to see what it was like. Immediately, the board displayed a list of strange items he had never heard of before. At this point, Ha-jun felt even more confused. These fancy items seemed useless to him because he wasn't a dungeon hunter. After scrolling for a while, Ha-jun saw an option to exchange points for cash. He tapped it immediately, and a 10,001 bill appeared in real life right before his eyes. He stood there, dazed, holding the bill while checking his remaining points, 999. He still couldn't quite believe it, so he tried tapping it a few more times. Sure enough, just like before, the bills suddenly appeared and started fluttering down. Money was raining down like leaves, and for a broke loser like Ha-jun, it was pure bliss. His time had finally come, folks, right after making a ton of cash from the app. Ha-jun immediately ran to a shop and treated himself to a special black bean noodle bowl with all the toppings, because the funds he received from the app were totally legitimate. Even paying bills and withdrawing cash from an ATM worked perfectly. So he boldly converted 200 points into 10 million won in his account, still leaving 800 points in the app. He never expected that just one delivery for a god could pay so well. Maybe his ancestors were looking out for him to land such a sweet gig. But since this was his first time holding this much money, he had no idea what to do with it. Just then, a news report on TV about the nation's top hunters caught his attention. Specifically, they announced that they were going to conquer one of the world's most dangerous dungeons named Tartaros, while simultaneously succeeding in recruiting the 5th-ranked hunter Heon Seong, who had signed a direct contract with the god Hephaestus. At that moment, Ha-jun suddenly remembered that the dwarf god's name was Hephaestus, his most VIP customer on the Divine Delivery app. After stuffing his face, Ha-jun luckily received another order from that Divine Delivery app. The moment he got on his bike, he was instantly teleported to a breathtaking garden full of rare, fragrant flowers. He guessed this might be a corner of the Garden of Eden, so his customer was likely a deity who governed plants. Sure enough, just as Ha-jun suspected, the one who appeared was Demeter, the goddess in charge of the harvest on Earth. Afterward, both sides greeted each other politely. Demeter revealed that she already knew about Ha-jun's delivery service through her nephew Hephaestus. Hearing that, Ha-jun jumped at the chance to promote his service, promising it was reliable, fast, and absolutely safe. After all, delivering for gods paid so well that he wanted to keep doing it in the future. Furthermore, he hoped Demeter would ask him to deliver something valuable or similar, so the delivery fee would be even higher. But unfortunately this time, she only wanted him to deliver a lunchbox to her daughter because gods on Mount Olympus like her couldn't just leave their palace without a valid reason. It turned out Ha-jun's mission was just to deliver a lunchbox. Talk about an easy game. However, before he left, Demeter, who had been happy, suddenly lost her mood and all the surrounding plants withered rapidly. Witnessing this strange scene, Ha-jun was surprised and confused, but ultimately this was a god's private business, so he didn't dare to pry as long as he did his job and got paid what he deserved. Afterward, Ha-jun opened the app to check the delivery location, and just like last time, in a blink, a mysterious beam of light teleported him down to Earth. This meant Demeter's daughter was in the mortal realm, even living in the Sincheon district of South Korea. Ha-jun never imagined that one day he'd be doing divine deliveries in Korea, so he was dying to know how many points he'd get this time. But if everything were this easy, it wouldn't be any fun, right? The moment Ha-jun arrived at the delivery spot, he was horrified to realize his customer was inside one of the most dangerous portals in the world. Even the most talented hunters had met their end here. At this point, Ha-jun tried to stay calm and reassure himself that Demeter's daughter was probably just waiting at the entrance, and not deep inside. But to his shock, the app led him right into the portal. Talk about a delivery straight to the underworld. Ha-jun immediately panicked, looking for a way to cancel the order. But to his dismay, he saw a tiny note warning that failing or canceling the delivery would result in divine punishment. What the hell? He clearly remembered that wasn't there before. On top of that, this crappy app even tracked the delivery time. If he didn't finish on time, he'd be punished too. Ha-jun deeply regretted it now. Why didn't he check more carefully before accepting the order? Just looking at it, he knew this was going to be tough. A mountain of guards holding heavy artillery looking fierce as hell. A delivery guy like him, how on earth was he supposed to get in? While he was stuck, the delivery app suddenly suggested he check the shop to see if there were any useful items. But that was useless because Ha-jun knew he didn't have enough points to buy anything else. He even thought about converting all his current points into cash to hire some hunters to do the delivery for him. Right then, the app suddenly suggested a copy of Kini, an item that hides the user's presence and existence, for 30 minutes. This was exactly what he needed right now. It just so happened to cost exactly 800 points. Even though he didn't want to blow his entire fortune given the situation, he had to grit his teeth and buy it. Right after he paid, The copy of Kini appeared and dropped right onto the ground. "Oh my God, my 8,000,001! Ha-jun quickly ran to pick it up, blowing the dust off. He then put the hat on and successfully rode his bike right past the guards holding the gate, as expected of one of the world's most dangerous portals. The moment he entered, Ha-jun felt a terrifying aura radiating everywhere. He thought it was just a normal delivery, but he never expected things to go this far. Who on earth is eating lunch in a scary place like this? Even though he was scared out of his wits, Ha-jun still gritted his teeth and gunned his warhorse forward. Meanwhile, he didn't forget to chant some prayers to keep himself safe thanks to the power of that Hazun cap that helped him breeze through checkpoints filled with dangerous monsters. Finally, the delivery app pinged that he'd arrived, but he couldn't see a damn thing in this dark, godforsaken place. Left with no other choice, he had to shout to call for the customer. "Is anyone home? Your delivery is here." But his loud yelling woke up a three-headed hellhound guarding the place. To make matters worse, the time limit on the replica cap from Kini had just run out. The dog spotted Hazun. That's it, he's done for. Hazun was absolutely desperate. Thinking about ending up as dog food made him want to tear up. Plus, he still hadn't spent his 199 points. But in the heat of the moment, Hazun remembered he still had one item used left. But just before the dog could gobble him up, a mysterious voice commanded it to stop. And just like that, he cheated death once again. It wasn't until he turned around that Hazun realized the voice belonged to a little girl. But what was weird was why a little girl would be in a terrifying place like Tartarus. It seemed she didn't really pay him any mind. She walked straight up to the three-headed dog and started petting it. That's when Hazun realized this was Demeter's daughter. But before he could even explain why he was there, an authoritative voice boomed from behind him. "Where are you going? Oh, are you playing with Cerberus?" It turned out the person who arrived was Hades, the lord of the underworld. But things didn't just end there. Before Hazun could say a word, Hades suddenly attacked him. "You are the first living person in thousands of years to dare set foot in this land of the dead. Orpheus came here to save his late wife, but you stole my cap. Oh wait, this looks like a knockoff." Right then, Persephone, standing nearby, spoke up and reminded Hades to let Hazun go first to see if he had an explanation. Hades actually listened, dropping the dying boy and ordering him to explain himself. If he didn't have a good reason, he'd make him a permanent resident of this place with no way back. "Please stay calm, my lord. I'm just here to make a delivery." "A delivery? What could you possibly have for me? Hades, lord of the underworld. Not for you, it's a delivery from your wife to your daughter." Hades and Persephone were both left confused, wondering what the heck he was talking about, while Hazun was already terrified. He quickly pulled out the lunchbox to explain. As soon as she saw the lunchbox, Persephone recognized it immediately as her mother's, so she rushed over to take it from Hazun's hands. By this point, Hades finally understood everything. So it was his mother-in-law who had booked the delivery service to send a lunchbox to his wife. Hearing that, Hazun felt like something was off. Wait a second. If that's her mother, then that little girl is his wife. But clearly he was way too old, luckily. Hazun managed to keep his big mouth shut. If Hades had heard the whole thought, he would have surely sent him to the afterlife. But it seemed the old man caught on to his intent. "Were you just about to say something about me, Hades, lord of the underworld?" Hearing that, Hazun nearly pissed himself, but who would have guessed the old geezer? Hades was just messing with him, trying to scare him a little. "I didn't think you were that much of a coward." Holy crap, he nearly scared the soul out of him, and yet he was laughing so happily. What a heartless old man. It didn't stop there. Hades asked for his name. "So your name is Lee Ha-jun. Your little antics amused me, so I will forgive your illegal entry. However, you dared to mock me, so prepare to face the consequences." Having said that, he reached out as if to finish Hazun off, but he never expected that the guy just wanted to pay for the shipping and ask him to thank his mother-in-law. At that moment, Hazun thought, "Damn it, why didn't you say so sooner, man? You almost gave me a heart attack. I nearly ascended to heaven." However, what shocked him even more was what happened right after. His account on the Divine Delivery app sent a balance notification: "Delivery successful. You have received 10,000 points. You were also awarded an extra 5,000 points by Hades, lord of the underworld, a total of 15,000 points. Congratulations." Plus, Hades agreed to return his cap. Even though this delivery trip was incredibly rough, and he had to deal with a short-tempered client, oh my god, it was intense, but looking at the results on the app, Hazun felt like every effort and bit of hard work he put in was worth it. Before leaving, he didn't forget to bow deeply to show his gratitude for the tip given by Hades. At the same time, somewhere else in the dungeon, The famous hunting team Ion 1 was fiercely battling a giant, massive monster. After a long struggle, the monster finally perished under the blade of the young hunter Seojun. It seemed that taking down a high-level monster brought the team many benefits, so everyone was extremely excited and happy. After that, a female hunter named Erin took on the job of gathering items like magic stones from the monster's carcass. Seojun saw this and gave a quick reminder. However, right at this moment, their keen intuition seemed to sense an unknown object approaching at very high speed. Immediately, the whole team became extremely tense. Because they had just finished fighting that monster, most of the members were out of combat energy. If what was coming next happened to be another monster, then perhaps the whole team would meet their end right here. Seeing that things were taking a turn for the worse, Seojun reassured everyone and promised to hold the monster back so they could all escape. With that, he and Aaron quickly took their stances, ready for a life-or-death battle. But what they were waiting for wasn't a monster. It was that delivery guy Ha-jun riding his trusty steed back home. Even Ha-jun himself was surprised to run into a hunting team that had just aggroed a monster, so he couldn't help but make a few comments, wished them good luck, and casually twisted the throttle. He rode off, leaving the entire Young One team in a state of absolute jaw-dropping bewilderment. They were like, what the hell was that? When you think about it, 150 million won could practically send you back to the Jurassic era. As for the actual number, it's nearly triple the population of South Korea. Or if you imagine getting paid 3,000 won per delivery, you'd have to make over 50,000 trips. But Ha-jun, just by making one delivery for a god, he got 150 million won in his account. He could stare at his balance screen all day and never get bored. Of course, this amount was well-deserved, considering what Ha-jun had been through, draining every cent from his pockets to buy supplies, then risking it all by entering one of the most dangerous gates to make a delivery, having to bypass dozens of grotesque monsters, nearly becoming a snack for the three-headed Cerberus, and almost getting finished off by Hades. If he had to deal with an order like this every few days, Ha-jun would likely kick the bucket early, especially when dealing with a client who's both terrifying and has a temper as hot as the Hades. Even if you paid him gold, he wasn't sure he'd dare try it again. But those nightmare days were over. And the most important thing now is that Ha-jun has truly escaped the life of a broke scrub. Just thinking about the money in his bank account makes his heart swell with joy, and he can't stop grinning. He's smiling ear to ear. Meanwhile, the media is holding a press conference regarding the Xeon hunting team's achievement of clearing the first floor of the Tartarus dungeon. However, the team leader Seojun can't bring himself to be happy because the appearance of that mysterious delivery guy has become a thorn in their side. They should have chased after him to get some answers, but unfortunately they were all way too tired and exhausted at the time to even think about it. Even now, Seojun is still full of regrets. Various theories have been tossed around, but none with any solid proof. Even though he's deeply troubled by the mystery courier that day. But as the leader guiding the whole group, Seojun realizes that their main goal is raiding the dungeon, not getting too bogged down in an investigation. Afterward, he announced, on second thought, I want you to head to the Suwon Doyun area. Initially, I was going to have the rookies hold all our weapons. But actually, we only need some rare ore from the Doyun dungeon right now. As for your training tonight, leave that to Aaron. You've got a driver's license anyway, right? For Doyun, going to the Suwon area for a mission was no problem. But he was curious why the leader needed him there. It turned out Seojun needed something called Heavenly Steel. Because he was busy, he asked Doyun to go grab it. Back on his end, Ha-jun had boldly ordered a fried chicken and beer combo to treat himself at home, but before he could even take a bite, his phone suddenly pinged with a notification. He immediately grabbed the phone and opened the app. Chicken can wait, but his VIP customers definitely cannot. Afterward, Ha-jun was transported to an incredibly hot, scorched land. He took one look and recognized it as Hephaestus's domain. However, because he was in such a rush, he didn't have time to bring his gear or his motorcycle. While Ha-jun was scrambling, wondering what was going on, Hephaestus suddenly emerged from somewhere with a face so sad he looked like he'd lost his life savings, which freaked him out. After that, Ha-jun asked him why he wasn't inside his house, and why he was hiding all the way out here. The god then confessed that he'd been kicked out of the house. It turned out the whole thing started because Hephaestus and his good brother, the god Dionysus, had been hitting the bottle a bit too much, so his tiger wife threw him out. Hearing that Ha-jun was just speechless, he never expected the gods on Olympus to act just like regular humans down on Earth. Once he grasped the situation, he asked Hephaestus what he wanted him to deliver. The god replied, anything edible. Ha-jun was in complete shock. Are the gods up there? So high and mighty, yet so hungry that they have to call a delivery guy. Seeing the disbelief on his face, Hephaestus slowly explained that because his wife kicked him out so early he hadn't had a single thing to eat. Even though he begged, his wife had declared that all the nectar for the month was gone. With no other choice, he had to request his service to order some meat and alcohol. Thinking about it compared to the delivery at the Tartarus dungeon, this one was an easy game. Ha-jun. It didn't hesitate. He jumped into the app to teleport back to Earth to grab the food. A moment later, he returned with the fried chicken and beer to save a starving Hephaestus. He didn't forget to explain to the god that this was the most popular fried chicken combo on Earth. He had originally bought it for himself, but since he was a VIP client, he was sharing it. Ha-jun originally thought the gods wouldn't be used to human food, but who would have guessed Hephaestus absolutely loved these two items. He even started doubting if this guy was really a god at all. Hephaestus must have been very satisfied with Ha-jun's service today, as he decided to give him a bonus of 15,000 points on the app. That brings his total points to 30,000. This means he just earned another 150 million won just by delivering fried chicken. Now, in Ha-jun's eyes, Hephaestus is no longer just a short, grumpy god, but a major benefactor and his second parent. Indeed, material conditions determine consciousness, right at this moment. A character he never expected appeared, Hephaestus's wife Aphrodite, a goddess so elegant and beautiful with a literal bling-bling effect every time she showed up. You could say she was the most beautiful woman Ha-jun had ever seen in his 20-some years of life. She was so stunning that he almost shed a tear looking at her, then glanced at the short, stubby god next to her and felt genuinely sorry for her. It was like a beautiful jasmine flower stuck in a pile of cow dung. Even when Aphrodite was angry and scolding Hephaestus, Ha-jun felt he deserved it. He immediately forgot about the 150 million won and took the goddess's side. Not only was she beautiful, but Ha-jun also found Aphrodite very polite and gentle when greeting a mortal like him. Especially since she didn't forget to thank him for taking care of her husband today either, making a young guy like Ha-jun feel incredibly awkward at a time like this. Hephaestus just remembered there was one more important thing he wanted him to rush deliver today. Though he wasn't keen on working overtime, the goddess's encouragement changed his mind. Fueled by that adrenaline boost, Ha-jun accepted the request immediately. Turns out the item Hephaestus wanted him to ship was celestial steel. The delivery destination was in Suwon, South Korea. Soon after, Ha-jun donned his familiar delivery gear and set off on his trusty cub, his 50 cubic centimeter cub, heading to Suwon as usual. However, this was his first time delivering to a mine called Ceres, or more accurately, a dungeon filled with metal ore. He felt a bit nervous. To be honest, when he saw the destination was a dungeon, he didn't want to take the order, but because he wanted to impress the ladies, he was too embarrassed to say no. Fortunately, this Ceres dungeon was safer than the Tartarus dungeon from last time, as many hunters had already cleared it. The only headache was dealing with the monsters. Last time he had the replica of Kini's item so he could trick them and sneak through. But this time, what did he have to protect himself? That's why Ha-jun told Hephaestus that he couldn't take this delivery. Yesterday, he almost met his maker delivering to Demeter in the Tartarus dungeon. After all, he wasn't a hunter and had zero combat ability against monsters. Back then, he had to use an invisibility item to stay hidden, but unfortunately, he'd used up all the charges and it was no longer effective. Hearing this, Hephaestus offered to fix the helmet for him since that was his specialty. Long story short, Ha-jun could still use the Kini replica helmet. He began heading into the Ceres dungeon, but to his utter surprise, it wasn't dangerous at all. People were actually inside holding a fair. It was absolutely wild. Even though he knew the threat level here was low, he was still shocked to see people relaxing and partying inside a dungeon. It was like just another day in the neighborhood. At this point, Ha-jun decided to venture deeper, completely unaware that he had just walked past the client. About 30 minutes later, Ha-jun had ridden deep into the dungeon where no humans were in sight. The path became rugged and difficult, and he gradually started seeing crystals and minerals all around. But the thing he was really looking for was the celestial steel, not these. Based on information he found online, he knew that celestial steel wasn't a gem. It was a block of steel that emitted a deep crimson glow. At this rate, Ha-jun still had a long way to go before he'd even have a chance of finding it. While he was focused on riding, a skeletal monster suddenly appeared, startling him so much he crashed into a rock. The result, his trusty 50cc cub was smashed up pretty badly. After riding for a long time into the deepest part of the dungeon, Ha-jun finally found what was called celestial steel, but now the problem was how to carry it back. Sure enough, after struggling with it for a while, the steel block didn't budge an inch. Just when Ha-jun was at a dead end, the delivery app suddenly suggested an item in the shop to solve his problem. But when he looked at the price, he was stunned. A pickaxe that cost 47 million won. Was it made of gold or something? He was clearly furious about the price. Plus, back at the crowded entrance, he had seen a booth selling and renting out pickaxes for very cheap. But when he thought about going back, Ha-jun felt it was just too much of a hassle. After weighing his options, he decided to just buy the shop item to get it over with. After all, he would get a decent payout once he finished the delivery for Hephaestus. You really get what you pay for. With a single swing, Ha-jun easily detached the steel block from the massive rock. Then he put all his strength into lifting it onto his bike. He thought it was all over, but unexpectedly, as Ha-jun was preparing to leave the hard rock where he'd just taken the celestial steel from, suddenly stirred and transformed into a gigantic monster. At the same time, on the other side, that Bruce Lee vibe guy Do-yoon was busy mopping the floor with the skeletal monsters when he heard a loud noise from afar. He immediately got into his fighting stance, ready to battle, but he saw the mysterious shipper from the Tartarus dungeon the other day, speeding away for his life. Seeing this strange sight, Do-yoon was puzzled, but a split second later, when that monster chased him down, he understood exactly why. Ha-jun was so terrified and running for his life. Because even someone with the superpowers of a hunter in a famous guild like Do-yoon would have to turn tail and run in this situation, let alone an ordinary guy like Ha-jun. If he didn't run fast, he'd be pushing up daisies and meeting his ancestors early. Although he'd provoked a dangerous monster inside the dungeon by some miracle, Ha-jun was still alive and managed to bring the celestial steel back to Hephaestus in one piece. Naturally, he was furious that this god had given him such a dangerous order. He almost took a one-way trip to the afterlife. Yet his attitude was so indifferent and innocently oblivious, as if it had nothing to do with him. Then Ha-jun hauled the celestial steel he'd found out to show him. But he didn't expect him to just stare blankly and ask, "What is this?" Ha-jun was like, "Are you kidding me, old man?" Thinking about all the hard work he'd put in, even risking his life, only for this god to say it wasn't celestial steel, it made Ha-jun absolutely livid. However, Hephaestus didn't actually mean what he thought. Perhaps he had misunderstood, because what he meant was that he had never seen a piece of celestial steel of such high quality and purity before. Seeing that Ha-jun didn't quite get it, Hephaestus ran off to grab another piece of celestial steel to compare and show him the difference. Clearly, his small stone wasn't even in the same league as the one he brought back. Even he himself hadn't expected Ha-jun to be able to bring back such a top-tier item. Immediately, he gave him a nice fat bonus of 500 million won. Seeing that massive amount of money in his account, all his previous fatigue and exhaustion seemed to vanish instantly. Of course, Ha-jun was incredibly grateful for Hephaestus's generosity. He even knelt down to thank him. He treats that guy like a reincarnated parent. The only thing left to do is put his picture on the altar and worship him. Now that he's got this kind of money, Ha-jun won't have to struggle or stress out over making ends meet like some poor sap anymore. Thinking about how his life is finally turning around, Ha-jun is just happily enjoying life, completely oblivious to what a massive headache he's become for everyone else. Meanwhile, Do-yoon and Seo-jun are watching the news about a serious earthquake at the Saori dungeon. Thankfully, there were no casualties in the incident. Seo-jun, guessing from the situation, the Saori dungeon gate will likely be closed for a long time. Since Do-yoon was at the scene that day, he was asked by his teammates about the specific details. Do-yoon didn't hold anything back and told Seo-jun the truth. The earthquake was caused by a monster. A giant golem caused it. Plus, at the moment the monster went berserk, he even saw that mysterious delivery guy from the Tartaros dungeon again. Seo-jun was totally shocked to hear that, because the last time they saw, Ha-jun was in the Seoul area, yet within such a short time he was already in the Suwon region. But Do-yoon discovered something even more shocking. The golem monster seemed to be chasing the delivery guy at the time. This is really suspicious, Seo-jun, based on the clues from both the Tartaros and Saori dungeons, guessed that the mysterious guy in the delivery gear might be a hunter with abilities beyond radar detection. However, Do-yoon didn't quite agree with the captain's theory this time. He proposed a plan to uncover the delivery guy's true identity. Since he remembers the outfit, the motorcycle, and the logo on the delivery box, very clearly finding him shouldn't be too hard. Seo-jun agreed with this initiative. He immediately assigned the search task to Do-yoon and didn't forget to boost his morale. Do-yoon, you've done a great job this time. Anyway, I'm just glad you came back safe. You must be exhausted, so leave everything else to me. Oh, and about that heavenly steel I asked you to find. Ah, well, the kid Do-yoon totally forgot about it. Meanwhile, our troublemaker Hajun is still clueless about the chaos he caused at the Sayori dungeon and is busy soaking up his joy. He feels that even though working as a delivery guy for the gods is pretty dangerous, the money he makes is no joke, especially the temptation. It's impossible to deny. His current income could even rival top-tier hunters worldwide, hitting around 30 billion won if you subtract the cost of the pickaxe he bought. He's already made 45 million won today. However, the thing he worries about most whenever he goes on a delivery is facing those monsters. So every time he steps into a dungeon, he gets incredibly stressed and exhausted. Shortly after Jun tried opening the app to see if there was anything useful. But the items sold in the shop are just way too expensive. Even the cheapest item costs 210 million won. Not to mention that all these items are just replicas and can only be used once or twice. Therefore, Hajun had to give up on the idea of soloing dungeon monsters because he obviously doesn't have the skills to take them on and he'd likely get himself killed if he wasn't careful. After scrolling a bit more, Hajun stumbled upon an item that looked pretty useful, a set of protective riding gear. Damn, this is good stuff. Why did I only just see it now? Compared to the 2 items he bought before, this is clearly more useful. Even though it's pricey, Hajun decided to shell out the cash as an investment for his safety because, after all, he can always make the money back. In the future. As soon as he got the gear, he tried it on right away. At first it felt a bit uncomfortable, but then it felt like he wasn't wearing anything at all. He didn't even feel hot in the slightest. Premium gear really hits different. After that, he decided to go big and test the gear out while it was still fresh. Elsewhere, Do-yoon is still on his mission to find the identity of the mysterious delivery guy who's been haunting Captain Seo-jun. Obviously, searching every delivery company from Suwon to Seoul based on just a few clues is not easy at all. Even when he got the license plate number, Do-yoon couldn't access the system to find the home address or other information. On top of that, the person he's looking for isn't a criminal, so the police can't provide any relevant information. After trying every possible way, the poor guy was totally desperate, damn it all. Just then he accidentally spotted a very familiar figure on the street. Even though at first glance the person looked like any ordinary delivery guy when Do-yoon looked closer, and especially at the motorcycle license plate which matched the mysterious guy's, he realized the person who just rode past him was the very target he'd been struggling to find. All this time, he immediately gave it his all to chase after him, but how can a man on foot compare to a motorcycle? So he quickly hopped into a nearby taxi and told the driver to hurry up and chase the bike in front. But little did he know he'd run into a driver with a temper as hot as chili. Before he could even get comfortable in his seat, he was kicked out. With no other choice, Do-yoon had to run for his life. After a marathon session, he finally collapsed from exhaustion on the road and lost track of the delivery guy. However, before Do-yoon could even catch his breath, another incident occurred. A massive boom from a nearby area grabbed his attention and that of the people all around. He immediately ran over to check the situation. Even though he couldn't find the delivery guy, he was greeted by the elderly people there who he brushed off their warnings about the terrifying loud noises from the mountaintop, which were likely caused by landslides. He reassured them, introducing himself as a hunter so they didn't need to worry about his safety. Ignoring the advice of the 2 elderly people, he kept charging headlong toward the peak. However, upon reaching the source of the noise, Do-yoon didn't see a single living creature or anything unusual except for one thing. A massive boulder had been pierced clean through with a giant hole in the center. Based on his years of experience fighting in dungeons, Do-yoon guessed this had to be the aftermath of a battle. A combat encounter between high rankers of Class B or higher. Moreover, this person must have possessed extremely skilled and masterful technique to create such a large opening while maintaining the overall structure of the boulder. You could say this is something not just anyone or any high ranker could achieve. These traces most likely belonged to some magical force or a deity, not a mere mortal. On the other hand, Do-yoon noticed that ever since their hunting team encountered the mysterious shipper at the Tartaros dungeon, strange events had been happening constantly. Therefore, he was determined to bring that person to meet the captain as soon as possible. At the same time, Hajun was enjoying a hearty meal at a small diner after testing the durability of his new protective suit. It turned out that giant hole in the rock was Hajun's handiwork. Even he hadn't expected the power of this suit to be so terrifying. Now he felt much more confident shipping in dungeons. He might even be able to eat the monsters inside, no joke. Just then, Hajun received another order from the Divine Delivery app. However, the drop-off location wasn't Mount Olympus like usual, but a place in the Bujan region, immediately after he searched for the location on the map. The result was a dungeon at Mount Hogo. Sure enough, orders from this app were never normal. If it were before, Hajun would have hesitated and worried about accepting such orders. But now he was in a different position. A few measly dungeons couldn't stop him anymore, so he decided to take the order tomorrow after the protective suit. Reset. In another development, Doyun was incredibly excited, recounting how he had bumped into the mysterious shipper on the streets in the Nojangjin district. Meanwhile, he was trying his best to convince the captain to send more people to track the person's whereabouts. He had even designed a poster to increase recognition and make finding the person easier. However, what Seojun was really concerned about was the story regarding the rock on the mountain. If what Doyun said was true, it proved the mysterious shipper possessed strength even greater than high-ranking hunters like Doyun and Seojun. Thus, the Ion 1 hunter team had to find that person even faster unless they wanted the Black Dragon Guild to recruit him first. While the Ion 1 hunter team had solidified their position domestically as the top guild, standing in second place was their mortal enemy, the Black Dragon Guild. Recently, the Black Dragon Guild had been growing at lightning speed, constantly climbing the ranks and achieving many notable feats by controlling forbidden dungeons and bribing high-level officials to cover up their illegal activities. The Black Dragon Guild was even frequently mentioned in the media, stirring up public controversy. Even worse, they were willing to use any means necessary to boost their influence. Just hearing about them, you know they're bad news. Naturally, because of all this, the Ion 1 hunter team couldn't let the Black Dragon Guild get ahead and take the #1 spot on the server. Furthermore, Dongjun noticed that the Black Dragon Guild had been showing more suspicious activity lately, so he wanted Doyun to temporarily put aside the search for the mysterious shipper and immediately start investigating their activities. The next day, Hajun arrived at the dungeon gate in Bucheon to deliver an order for a client, but it seemed like a festival was going on there. Luckily, Hajun had prepared a replica of Kini's hat, so people didn't notice him, and he easily got past the security force there. After a long trek, he finally reached the delivery location. However, he didn't see a single house or a soul anywhere around except for a mountain standing tall right in front of him. Perhaps still traumatized from his previous boneheaded move of poking a hornet's nest at the Cerberus dungeon, he was terrified that the mountain in front of him would suddenly transform into a supermassive monster. But very soon after, he reassured himself that the new protective suit would carry him through all trials with monsters. Just as Hajun was preparing to climb the mountain to check it out, a strange voice suddenly called out to him. It turned out to be a monkey pinned under the mountain. Wait, hello? Why is this plot so familiar? After calming down, Hajun realized that this monkey was the client who ordered him. So the monkey had learned about his special delivery service through a child. Actually, I need you to find me some things located in this area. Of course I can do that for you, sir, but what should I call you? The Great Sage Equal to Heaven, the Victorious Fighting Buddha. You can call me whatever you like, but I prefer to be called the Great Sage Equal to Heaven. Just call me Sun Wukong, that's fine. Hearing that Hajun was shocked. He never expected that one day he would be delivering to Sun Wukong. Then Sun Wukong stated his request. He needed Hajun to find a box hidden in the forest ahead. After learning the client's request, Hajun immediately opened the map to locate the forest and set off right away. In another development, a group of hunters was clashing with an 8-tailed monster. The very next second, the big-shot Yuhan president of the Black Dragon Guild appeared to direct her underlings to make mincemeat of the monster in front of them. It seems that after getting information that the Ion 1 hunter team achieved a clean sweep in the Tartaros dungeon, she was determined to plan the destruction of the 8-tailed monster, something the Ion 1 team had failed to do before, to put them in their place and rise to the #1 spot on the server. Very quickly, Yuhan ordered her underlings to hurry forward and attack the monster. However, this monster was not weak in the slightest. It only just flexed its power and the whole bunch was already nearly peeing their pants. Damn, how the hell are we supposed to fight this hunk of scrap metal? Plus, you guys didn't tell us from the start that we'd be fighting a dungeon boss. The high-ranking hunters were already looking to bail, but those guys in suits threatened to take out anyone who tried to leave their post. With no other choice, they just had to stand there paralyzed and unsure of what to do. Only one brave uncle stepped up to take the monster on solo. A minion standing nearby noticed things weren't looking too good, and asked Yuhan if these low-rank hunters actually had a chance of winning. But that woman just indifferently replied that she didn't know, clearly not caring about the lives of the people on the front lines. Meanwhile, Hajun was on his way to find the box Sun Wukong requested. The commotion from the fight with the monster was so huge it caused tremors all the way to his location. Even the monkeys in the surrounding area were scrambling to get out of there. Just looking at the smoke and fire down the road, he knew something was up. But since our guy Ha-jun felt pretty confident with his fancy new gear, he decided to ride over to check out the situation. By now, the hunter team, tricked by Yuhan, was struggling to fight the monster, but it was like throwing pebbles at a tank. The monster didn't even flinch. While everyone was getting absolutely wrecked, someone ran over to Yuhan to beg for help, but she couldn't care less and ignored them. One of her underlings even stepped up to rough him up. This scummy behavior enraged everyone fighting for their lives, but at the end of the day, they didn't dare cross the Black Dragon Guild. The only way to get out of here alive was probably to take the monster down. So, the uncle decided to risk it all and charge in, clearing a path for the others to attack. Sure enough, working together like this was effective. As soon as the monster went down, everyone cheered, thinking it was finally done for. But hey, it's a final boss, how could it be that easy? Very quickly after that, it got right back up as if it had never been knocked down, even activating an 8-trigram formation and becoming even more powerful than before. This immediately pushed everyone there into total despair. At the same time, hiding in a bush, Ha-jun had been watching the whole thing from the start. Elsewhere, Do-yoon from the Yongwon hunter team had arrived at the entrance of the Hugo dungeon, but he was blocked by a member of the Black Dragon Guild. Immediately, he half-guessed their intentions and pushed his way into the dungeon, ignoring the guy trying to stop him. As soon as he saw smoke rising in the distance, Do-yoon felt that something was wrong. He rushed to the scene to tell them the real reason why the Yongwon team gave up on conquering Mount Hua. Back at the fight, the battle between the monster and the fodder hunters had entered the second round. Ha-jun was watching from the sidelines, scared out of his wits. At this rate, his new gear wouldn't be able to carry him through. Plus, the box Sun Wukong wanted was actually on the monster. After that, Ha-jun was shocked to realize the guys in black standing guard outside were members of the Black Dragon Guild. But what they did next truly horrified him. One of them casually grabbed an unlucky guy nearby and threw him into the fire on the monster's body, no matter how much he begged for his life. He didn't show a shred of mercy. Because that piece of garbage's actions were way too messed up, Ha-jun couldn't take it anymore. He transformed into a superhero and charged in to beat the guy up and save the victim. Everyone around them watched, stunned. They couldn't believe someone could be strong enough to crush a B-rank hunter so easily. Just then, Ha-jun had successfully saved the unlucky guy without even noticing the strange looks from everyone else. The guy seeing that told his savior to run away before he made enemies with the Black Dragon Guild. After that, Ha-jun slowly re-evaluated the situation. Truthfully, he could have easily grabbed the box and escaped while everyone was focused on fighting the monster. However, his conscience and morals wouldn't let him watch someone in danger without helping. So he decided to step in to save the man. He thanked the guy for his concern and told him to hide somewhere else while he stayed to clean up this mess. Because he was getting sick of the Black Dragon Guild's scummy behavior, it was pretty much guaranteed that they were going to have a showdown with Ha-jun. As for that woman, Yuhan, she was fuming because some stranger in a helmet was ruining her plans. Still, she kept her cool and ordered her underlings to find more sacrifices to throw into the fire. Only then could they destroy the 8-trigram monster. But before they could do anything, Ha-jun made his move. He aimed straight for the crack on the monster's head and poured all his strength into attacking it repeatedly. When Yuhan saw that she nearly had a heart attack, terrified that he was trying to trigger the 8-trigram formation, so she frantically ordered her minions to stop him. Immediately, dozens of arrows rained down on Ha-jun. He almost turned into a pincushion, but luckily our guy had main character plot armor and managed to dodge them all. Just then, a stray arrow accidentally hit the monster in the eye, making it even angrier. Out of options, they had to give up on using bows, and charged into the fight directly. However, that stray arrow made the monster fully awaken and enter its second transformation phase, especially for that woman, Yuhan, who turned pale when she saw it. Well, we're all screwed now. The monster then entered a killing spree, attacking the hunters nearby. Clearly, things were completely out of Yuhan's control, and she had no idea what to do, other than stand there stunned. Just when it seemed like everything was over, Ha-jun unexpectedly made a comeback, repeatedly slamming into the monster, even though he only had seconds left. Even though his protective gear was about to wear out, he refused to give up, pouring all his energy into those final seconds to finish off the monster, and luckily he landed the blow at the very last moment. Ha-jun took it down, leaving everyone around him in absolute shock, especially the young guy Do-yoon, who had just arrived and witnessed that level of raw power. That display of godly top-tier strength made a massive impression on Do-yoon, making him even more determined to uncover Ha-jun's identity. Meanwhile, the Black Dragon Guild was reeling from the aftershocks, But the woman Duhan locked her eyes on Ha-jun and ordered her goons to pounce while he was exhausted. She wanted to capture him easily after he'd finished off the monster. She was clearly furious that he'd stolen the kill and she was dead set on making him pay, but she had no clue that the high-ranking hunter from the Youngwon team, Ha Do-yoon, would suddenly show up right there. He made his hostility clear, and more importantly, he saw right through their scheme to use people as sacrifices. Duhan immediately ordered her underlings to shift their target to Do-yoon to silence him. Although Do-yoon realized the situation was turning against him, the only thing he cared about right then was the mysterious delivery guy. He kept scanning his surroundings, looking for that familiar silhouette. Just then, a lackey rushed over to report that the mysterious guy in the helmet had already vanished. Both sides were deeply disappointed, especially that young guy who had put in so much effort to track him down only to miss him by a hair's breadth. On top of that, he had to deal with the Black Dragon Guild, talk about rotten luck. Elsewhere, the troublemaker Ha-jun had already slipped away while the scene was chaotic. He didn't care about them fighting amongst themselves. On his way home, however, he stumbled upon something strange. The barrier separating the dungeon from the outside world was slowly fading away. He guessed this was linked to clearing the dungeon's final boss, that eight-legged monster. In reality, it had been a long time since anyone actually fully cleared a dungeon. Most hunters could only conquer part of one or kill some monsters at the gates. Some dungeons were even used as testing grounds for hunters to earn their certifications. So the fact that an ordinary guy with no superpowers, no hunter license, and who worked as a delivery driver like Ha-jun could wipe out an entire dungeon was absolutely unbelievable. Maybe it was a stroke of luck that no one knew his true identity. Otherwise, things would get really complicated really fast. After that, Ha-jun went back to where Sun Wukong was pinned down to complain about the rotten luck he'd just dealt with. Clearly, he had been tricked by this cunning monkey god. He nearly kicked the bucket out there. However, when he learned the eight-legged monster had gone berserk, Sun Wukong was genuinely surprised because someone must have provoked it to make it snap like that. In truth, the whole mess was started by the Black Dragon Guild, who were running wild, and the one who had to suffer through it all was poor unlucky Ha-jun. If he'd known, he would have let that monster eat them all. Damn it. How dare those bastards get in the way of his business? At this point, Sun Wukong reminded Ha-jun about the box he'd asked him to retrieve, even though at first Sun Wukong didn't really trust him. After all, the eight-legged monster had been enraged, and in his mind, Ha-jun was just a normal human. There was no way he had the skill to solo that monster. But the very next second, Sun Wukong got a slap in the face in the best way possible. Ha-jun actually produced the box, leaving the god ecstatic. Ha ha ha, you're the best. I never thought I'd see the day that I, the great sage, would meet a mortal who could take down that eight-legged beast while it was in a frenzy. What's your name? Lee Ha-jun? Why? Oh, Lee Ha-jun, I'll remember that. As soon as he said it, Sun Wukong grabbed the box from his hands and immediately shattered the seal that had kept him trapped under the mountain. Once he was finally free, he summoned his cloud and took off. Before leaving, he didn't forget to tell Ha-jun, "We'll meet again if fate allows." Hey, wait. You didn't pay me? Just as he finished, Sun Wukong tossed him a heavy bag of gold as payment and then vanished. Once everything was settled and he'd been paid, Ha-jun made it home safely. At the same time, the news was covering everything the Black Dragon Guild had done at the Hugo dungeon. It turned out the hunter Ha-jun had saved that day had stepped up to expose their true colors and their evil plot. He also revealed to the media that a mysterious hero in a helmet had bravely stood up to protect him and defeated the eight-legged monster in the dungeon. It seemed all the effort he'd put in wasn't wasted at all. Plus, his true identity remained hidden so he could continue living a comfortable life with the huge sum in his account. Specifically, he earned over 70,000 points this time. If converted to cash, that 700 million won plenty for him to buy an apartment in Seoul. On top of that, Ha-jun got a nice bonus reward, a handful of monkey fur. Whenever he blows on it, he can turn them into a swarm of Sun Wukong's clones. Plus, he'd been receiving tons of orders from gods lately. Most of them were dangerous jobs requiring him to venture deep into dungeons and face all kinds of lethal monsters. So, receiving a portion of the great sage's power was incredibly useful and could save his life in dangerous situations to come. And it seems Ha-jun's streak of good luck wasn't over yet, because not long after, he received another special order from a god. Elsewhere, after hearing the news that Do-yoon had been ambushed by the Black Dragon Guild at the Hugo dungeon, the team captain, Seo-jun rushed to the hospital to check on his teammate. Thankfully, young Do-yoon was only slightly injured and was perfectly fine. Even though Do-yoon said he was okay, Seo-jun still felt guilty for giving his teammate an assignment that was too much for him. Besides that, he was furious about what the Black Dragon Guild had done. They actually dared to touch a member of the Young One team. If Aaron had gone with Doyen, things probably would have turned out differently. But the reality is that the pride and reputation of the Young One Hunter team have been trampled on by those bastards, so as the team captain I'm speaking on behalf of everyone. Seo-jun is determined to personally deal with them in their next encounter. Furthermore, he's also deeply concerned about Doyen's health after the battle. If he happened to get injured or suffer any lingering health issues that might affect his career as a hunter, Seo-jun would feel incredibly guilty. Actually, the doctor said that my current condition isn't doing too well. Just kidding. Why so serious? Knock it off with the stupid jokes before I kick you out of the team. You hear me? Seeing the captain was actually on edge, the oblivious guy didn't dare to push his luck, and immediately revealed a piece of critical information the mysterious courier they've been searching for all this time is the very same person who took down the boss at the Hugo dungeon with their bare hands. When he heard this, Seo-jun was completely stunned, even a bit skeptical, but Doyen insisted that he had seen with his own eyes that this courier brother wiped out the monster in an incredibly short amount of time. Based on his own experience, he guessed that the mysterious courier brother is a martial artist just like him. Besides that, Doyen also let Seo-jun know that he suspects the courier's true location is in the Nojangjin district. However, Seo-jun has had people search everywhere in Nojangjin but hasn't found a single trace. According to Doyen, they checked the surveillance footage from the entire dungeon area, especially the entrance, and still didn't see anyone wearing the courier gear riding a motorcycle inside. It's like the guy just vanished into thin air. Meanwhile, Ha-jun has no idea that he's already in the crosshairs of the two top hunter teams in the country and is still casually going to pick up an order from the god Hephaestus because when he arrived, the guy was still hard at work, so he had to sit in a corner and wait for him to finish. But it seems the warm air in the room was quite comfortable. So just a moment later, Ha-jun started to feel sleepy. While he was nodding off, he accidentally face-planted right into Hephaestus's crotch. Holy crap. What the hell are you doing, kid? Haha. You look tired, so I was just teasing you a bit. But today you're going to have to travel quite a long distance. Are you ready? At first, Ha-jun seemed hesitant, but thinking about how the long-distance orders pay better, our poor hard-working guy immediately accepted the deal. This time, Hephaestus wants Ha-jun to deliver a staff carved with a cobra head to someone in Egypt within the day. Hearing that, the kid was dumbfounded. How in the world am I supposed to ride a motorcycle from South Korea to Egypt in just one day? Do you expect me to run on faith? Hephaestus didn't think Ha-jun would react that strongly to his request, so he immediately promised to introduce him to more potential clients, up on Mount Olympus to make up for it. That sounded reasonable enough, so the guy quickly changed his tune, ready to head to Egypt immediately, but before he could leave, Hephaestus stopped him. Turns out there was one more important thing he hadn't mentioned. The client for this order is quite special, so he had to find a special assistant to escort you. Right after that, a cute little goddess appeared. Hello, my name is Lucio. Shipping from Korea to Egypt might sound like a tough job, but actually, the distance has been greatly shortened thanks to magic. Ha-jun has a goddess as an assistant for this trip, so he doesn't need to worry too much about the journey. Except for the fact that the little brat Lucio is noisy, keeps screaming, and is literally riding on his shoulders, making Ha-jun boil with anger, while unable to do anything overall. Everything is going swimmingly. 1 hour ago, when he first met Lucio at Hephaestus's place, Ha-jun was skeptical and didn't believe that such a tiny girl could possibly help him on this trip. It seems Hephaestus understood what he was thinking, so he reminded Ha-jun not to underestimate little Lucio, because she is a goddess who possesses real, genuine, divine power. So she will definitely be able to help him during this trip. After getting such a solid confirmation from Hephaestus himself, Ha-jun felt relieved and set off with Lucio. But who would have thought that this little brat is annoying as hell? She keeps screaming, complaining, kicking him, and talking back to him. She has this entitled, "I'm the queen of the world" attitude and doesn't respect anyone. If it weren't for Hephaestus, the big client, he would have kicked her out long ago. Unable to stand it anymore, Ha-jun had to warn Lucio to stay quiet so he could focus on driving. But obviously she didn't care about what he said and continued to wreak havoc in the back seat until Ha-jun stuffed some candy into her mouth. Only then did she temporarily shut her trap. It seems like this was the first time Lucio had tasted the sweetness of earth candy, so the little brat was incredibly excited. Eating one piece wasn't enough to satisfy her, so she demanded Ha-jun give her more and promised to sit still. Just as Ha-jun thought, no matter if she's a goddess, Lucio is still just a young sprout right now. So the best way to soothe a child is to give them sweets. Like that, he could finally focus on driving. After a long time, Ha-jun finally left the magical space and officially stepped into the Egyptian desert. That meant there were only 800 meters left until they reached the delivery location. However, the truly difficult journey had only just begun, because a split second later, Ha-jun and Lucio encountered a sandstorm sweeping across. Luckily, heaven was on their side, so neither of them was blown away or buried under the sand, but Lucio started making a scene because sand got in her eyes. With no other choice, Ha-jun had to pick the little brat up to soothe her. Just then, a mysterious voice suddenly rang out, capturing the attention of both of them. "Greetings, intruders! If you want to pass through this place, you must first answer my riddle correctly. This is the legendary Egyptian Sphinx, a guardian that disposes of any intruder who fails to solve its riddle. Thousands of years ago, the Sphinx was likened to a terrifying storm that swept across Mount Olympus and nearly defeated Zeus, so its power is beyond question. In a situation where they have to face the Sphinx head-on, even with the help of the minor goddess Lucio, it is difficult for Ha-jun to leave this place alive. Not to mention he is not even a hunter blessed with divine power. If the gods don't protect him on this trip, the main character is as good as done for. At this moment, Ha-jun is so scared he can't even move. His instincts tell him that his normal physical attacks aren't strong enough to deal with the Sphinx in front of him. Moreover, he no longer has time to turn back. After carefully calculating, Ha-jun realizes the only way to overcome this ordeal is to answer the Sphinx's riddle correctly, so he decides to take a gamble. Although Lucio feels quite worried, they have no other choice now. Either they answer the riddle correctly, or both of them will be sent to the afterlife. Actually, Ha-jun didn't intend to risk his life like that, because he had already calculated every step. In reality, everyone already knows exactly what riddle the Sphinx will ask, partly because the stories about it are extremely famous, so answering incorrectly is almost impossible. However, Ha-jun also realized that he couldn't completely rule out the possibility of other questions appearing, so he prepared the treasure that Sun Wukong gave him last time as a precaution, in the worst-case scenario. Immediately after the Sphinx asked if they were ready to receive its question, Ha-jun was no longer as afraid as before and calmly accepted. Even little Lucio next to him was very understanding and believed that he would definitely overcome this ordeal. Seeing their attitude, the Sphinx didn't wait any longer and began to pose the riddle. Actually, Ha-jun had watched many stories about the Egyptian Sphinx, so he guessed that the riddle would likely be, what creature walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs in the afternoon, and 3 legs in the evening? And the answer would definitely be a human. Furthermore, the young man had years of experience watching quiz shows, so a few trick questions are just an easy game. Then the Sphinx posed the question, what sound does a duck make when it falls? Hearing that, the guy went insane and froze up. Lucio couldn't stay calm anymore and was immediately in total despair. What the hell, a duck? A duck goes quack quack, obviously, but there's no way the answer could be that easy. The answer definitely couldn't be that simple. And Lucio didn't know the answer either. Lucio couldn't help. Lucio didn't want to be eaten alive. Perhaps she was terrified by the Sphinx, so the little girl was crying so hard she couldn't speak clearly at this very moment, after elsewhere a mysterious woman was silently observing every move Ha-jun and Lucio made while they were completely unaware. In fact, faced with the Sphinx's tricky riddle, Ha-jun had brain faded, so he had no mood to pay attention to anything else. After a while, he slowly calmed down to reason. He was extremely confused, wondering if the answer to the riddle was really that easy, or if there was some other twist. In such a critical life-or-death moment, the bratty Sphinx intentionally made things difficult for Ha-jun by limiting the thinking time to 3 minutes. Seeing that their current situation was gloomier than the future of an impoverished person, Lucio cried even harder, desperately remembering her master's warning in the unfortunate event that they answer the Sphinx's riddle incorrectly, they must absolutely not turn around and run. Otherwise, they would face an extremely terrifying punishment. Running is not an option, and answering is not going well either. Both of them have fallen into a dilemma. However, just before the 3 minutes were up, Ha-jun gave the answer paint spray. Little Lucio was stunned upon hearing that. She couldn't believe he could answer so nonchalantly and started making a fuss, thinking, this time they were both doomed. But the main character's plot armor wouldn't just fail like that. Ha-jun's silly answer was actually accepted by the Sphinx as the correct one, leaving little Lucio shocked. Now, after receiving the correct answer, the Sphinx still wanted to challenge them further, but Ha-jun no longer had the patience to listen to this monster's nonsense, so he started his vehicle and took off, not caring about it at all. The Sphinx has lived through countless seasons, but this was the first time It had been so coldly dismissed by a tiny human like Ha-jun, so it felt a bit hurt and shed tears. When the guy caught it and mocked it, it just looked away, claiming that dust had flown into its eyes. Of course, Ha-jun didn't bother caring. After finishing, he drove away proudly to make his delivery in time, while Lucio, witnessing this scene, could only stare in amazement, unable to believe that a mortal with no special powers like Ha-jun would dare to talk back to a legendary creature like the Sphinx. However, Ha-jun didn't pay attention to her stunned expression and just focused on driving to deliver the goods. After a long while, when Ha-jun told Lucio that they only needed to pass this canyon to reach their destination, the little girl gathered all her courage to apologize to him for her words and actions earlier, and at the same time expressed that she really wanted to help him, but unfortunately, she was too useless. When Ha-jun saw the little girl regretful like this, he didn't blame her at all. He even comforted her, saying she shouldn't blame herself for being useless, because everyone has their own strengths and timing, just like Ha-jun did before. After talking to each other, it seemed like their relationship improved very quickly afterward. The two of them arrived at the delivery location, a super giant pyramid, but Ha-jun didn't see anyone here. It wasn't until Lucio reminded him that he noticed a rather strange mechanism. The sign said to ring the bell if the guard wasn't there. Ha-jun didn't think twice and hit the button immediately. The entire space around them started shaking. It was a violent tremor, as if they were being teleported. Suddenly, Lucio realized a massive surge of divine power was acting on them, causing the ground beneath their feet to crack wide open. Caught off guard, both Ha-jun and Lucio fell freely into the hole for quite a while until the shaking finally stopped. Ha-jun slowly came to in the wreckage. Thankfully, he had little Lucio as a cushion, so our human boy was still in one piece. Afterward, they had no choice but to follow the path, worn into the underground, hoping to find a way out. During this time, Lucio accidentally discovered something strange and called Ha-jun over. It turned out that the characters and drawings on the wall had caught her eye. Ha-jun came over to take a look too, but since he couldn't understand the ancient scripts, he could only guess the meaning based on the pictures. They looked like they were depicting humans and monsters. After observing the drawings closely, Lucio seemed to recall something important, and immediately told Ha-jun an Egyptian legend about an evil goddess who took pleasure in trapping and tormenting other goddesses. Lucio felt it was very likely that the drawings on the wall were about that evil goddess. However, after hearing that, Ha-jun was a bit skeptical because based on his observation, he felt the drawings looked more like they were describing a festival or some kind of celebration. It didn't look like what Lucio described at all. However, the little girl insisted her take was correct and even felt indignant for the goddesses, who had been harmed, declaring heroically that she would avenge them. Seeing Lucio, since he couldn't get through to her, he decided to just let it go. He was terrified that if their client turned out to be that evil goddess, they'd be completely screwed. And speak of the devil, she actually showed up. Neither Ha-jun nor Lucio expected the goddess to suddenly appear right behind them. She'd even overheard everything they were talking about. Ha-jun never imagined in a million years that he'd run into her in a situation like this. The light was so blinding he couldn't even see her face, and before he could figure out how to handle it that crazy, Lucio just rushed in to solo the goddess. Everything happened so fast that Ha-jun couldn't stop Lucio even with the tension this high. He thought they were about to start a death match, but he never expected the goddess to suddenly switch gears, hug Lucio, and start pinching her cheeks. He was frozen in shock. What the hell is going on here? She looks nothing like the evil goddess described in the legends at all. At that moment, the goddess slowly began to tell them the whole truth. It turns out a long time ago she had summoned many other goddesses here and hosted massive festivals for them. Everything came from her sincerity and good intentions, but unfortunately those goddesses are no longer here. And humans ended up completely misunderstanding the whole story. Wait, so you're saying all those goddesses kicked the bucket because you were smothering them like this? After hearing Ha-jun's blunt comment, the goddess panicked and realized she was hugging Lucio way too tight, so she let go immediately. That's how Lucio barely escaped being suffocated to death. Otherwise, she would have been done for. Now Ha-jun finally understood why Lucio said this goddess had a habit of torturing them. Now it was Lucio's turn to throw a tantrum, grilling Ha-jun for just standing there and not backing her up. If she isn't happy, this girl just starts making a scene. Seeing that Ha-jun and Lucio didn't seem to care much about her presence, the goddess introduced herself to impress them. I am the one who rules over the two most fertile and prosperous lands, the owner of all the temples in Egypt, the divine incarnation of the almighty Falcon Horus. I am the great pharaoh. She spent half a day bragging and acting all high and mighty, But those two guys, June and Lucio didn't seem to care at all, which left her feeling totally embarrassed. In reality, there are two types of gods or goddesses. One type is like an angel possessing divine power as soon as they manifest. And the other type is those who gain their divine power and status only through the worship and offerings of their followers. Hazun got straight to the point and told the pharaoh they were here to deliver a package, not knowing that she had been watching their every move from the very beginning through her crystal ball. Fa lay, and naturally she realized his goal immediately. The pharaoh summoned her staff back to her hand, leaving Hazun completely stunned, so shocked he nearly fell over backward. Given the situation, it's highly likely that she's the client for this delivery order. After checking the condition of the item, the pharaoh seemed extremely satisfied. She didn't expect that after such a long journey her cargo wouldn't have even a single scratch on it, so she didn't hold back in praising Hazun's service. The young man immediately smelled the scent of money and a business opportunity, so he quickly thanked her. At the same time, he shamelessly asked the pharaoh for a little tip and a 5-star review. Seeing this money-grubbing, hopeless attitude of Hazun, the little lady Lucio was completely speechless and questioned if he had any self-respect at all. But for a young man who had struggled through poverty and lived at the very bottom of society like Hazun, a bit of self-respect didn't mean a damn thing. He retorted to Lucio, "Does self-respect put food in my belly, even the candy that you're eating right now was paid for with the delivery money I earned. If you want candy, you better toss that self-respect aside, shut your trap, and eat up." Hearing there was candy to be had, Lucio also completely forgot about her pride and immediately ran over to beg for some along with Hazun. Even a goddess has to bow down to the power of capital. Seeing how sincere the two were, the pharaoh was very pleased and immediately tipped Hazun a generous 50,000 points, bringing your total assets up to 195,300 points. That's 19,530,000,000 won. Hazun was stunned, just staring at that number. With this kind of money, let alone buying a few candies, Hazun could even open a whole candy factory and it wouldn't be a problem. Before leaving, Pharaoh reminded the two of them that if they came back next time, it would be best to take the main entrance. And don't ever use this path again because this place really isn't convenient for deliveries. Plus, she had already left a note at the front of the pyramid entrance letting anyone arriving here know they just need to take a right at the entrance and knock on the door, that's all. Turns out this little leopard cub Lucio had misread the note earlier, causing Hazun to hit the wrong button, that cursed button, and forcing them to take the long way around before they could finally deliver the goods to the client. After completing the delivery to the Egyptian pyramid, Hazun and Lucio finally made it back to Hefeder's place. He had to wake up the little rascal who was fast asleep, and drooling just to return her to where she came from. Even though their first impression of each other didn't seem exactly great this trip, that had actually brought them closer together. They were even chatting happily before they were about to part ways, which left even Hefeder very surprised. Seeing how close Hazun and Lucio had become, especially noticing how well they coordinated with each other on the job, he suggested they should team up and work together in the future. The two of them were laughing and acting buddy-buddy, but in reality they couldn't stand the sight of each other. They immediately and simultaneously rejected Hefeder's suggestion right then and there. Never. I'd rather die than have to work with this annoying brat. However, life is never as perfect as a dream. The things you try the hardest to avoid are the things you end up stuck with. Just yesterday, when you turned down that god's offer, he actually got all sensitive and sulked at you. Out of respect for a VIP client, you had no choice but to temporarily take in the little brat Lucio. Because of that, Hazun is probably going to need some time to adapt to this situation because, after all, he's just a young man in his 20s living the single life. Living alone and suddenly having a little kid like this crashing on his couch, it's just a bit hard to get used to. Then Hazun tiredly asked Lucio why she woke him up at this hour. The little brat explained that the phone kept making noise, so she wanted to wake him up to see what was going on. Once she finished, she handed the phone to Hazun. It turned out to be 10 delivery notifications from the Manjob app, and they were all just basic low-paying food delivery orders. Just seeing this, and thinking back to that awful woman from last week, Hazun was too tired to even speak. Now he's got the little brat Lucio making a scene demanding he explain all these complicated matters. Just then, he actually got a call from his boss. It was perfect timing as he wanted to let the guy know he was quitting and terminating his contract with their delivery app anyway, so he picked up. But before he could even say a word, the guy went off on him, sounding all high and mighty, blaming him for not working hard and dedicating himself to the company, rambling on for so long that Hazun was left speechless and stunned on the other end of the line. If it were the old Hazun, he definitely would have given in. and scrambled to apologize, begging the guy not to fire him. But now he's in a different position, a different status, and he's got better gigs, so he doesn't give a damn about this trash boss anymore. Ha-jun immediately went Super Saiyan, unleashing all the frustrations he had been bottling up the entire time he worked for that guy. If you're so tough, go ahead and fire me. I couldn't care less, you old fart. Do you really think I need this crappy job? I've been putting up with you for a long time now. At this moment, Lucio, standing nearby, watched the explosion of a wage-slave delivery rider being pushed to the bottom of the social ladder by capitalism, and she was stunned. She never expected someone as normal, gentle, and goofy as Ha-jun to have such powerful fighting spirit. He even went so far as to roast his boss until the guy was practically crying. This made Lucio a bit worried about Ha-jun's situation, but in reality, after venting all that anger, he felt more relieved than ever. It felt damn good. Meanwhile, at the headquarters of the Ion 1 Hunter team, our subordinate Suho was reporting to Seo-jun about the progress of finding the mysterious delivery rider. Even though they had sent an entire team to search and scout for information, all their efforts had been in vain, because the team had lost the trail in the Noryangjin area, and since then, they hadn't heard a peep with no clues found whatsoever. Suho guessed that perhaps the person had discovered they were looking, and had intentionally hidden their tracks and changed their license plate. Hearing this, Seo-jun didn't want to keep searching or get too deep into this matter anymore because lately, the team had been facing so many problems. The conflict with the Black Dragon Guild alone had already made everyone exhausted and stressed out. Therefore, he realized he couldn't keep wasting resources and manpower just to find a mysterious person of unknown origins. Furthermore, lately, the Young One Hunter team is currently dealing with a dangerous portal in Busan. As of now, all 6 of their A-rank members have been forced to retreat early. They were severely injured, which goes to show that the situation is looking pretty grim. Just a month ago, a portal suddenly opened up on Haeundae Beach, causing a massive public outcry at the time. Seo-jun knew for a fact that this mission wouldn't be as easy as the others, but he never expected that 6 A-rank hunters wouldn't be able to handle it. After some deliberation, Seo-jun decided to have Suho recall the Vanguard team from Busan because he's going to step onto the battlefield himself this time. This could be a chance for the Young One team to reaffirm their position as the #1 guild in South Korea. Meanwhile, on the other side, our hardworking guy Ha-jun, after quitting his job, has moved on. He took the little troublemaker Lucio out for some Korean food. Since it was her first time having jjajangmyeon, a legendary Korean soul food, down here on Earth, she was absolutely loving it. She was shoveling it in like a reincarnated starving ghost, to the point where the aunties nearby started thinking Ha-jun was a young single dad taking his starving daughter out for a meal. Then little Lucio started acting clingy because she'd eaten way too much and got bloated. With no other choice, Ha-jun had to patiently coax her. He looked just like a dad taking care of his little girl. Even the human CCTV cameras at his old apartment building started gossiping about Ha-jun being an irresponsible single dad raising a kid in a tiny dumpy place. In reality, he had actually been thinking about moving somewhere better. With Lucio having moved in, he decided to seal the deal. Hearing that they were moving to a new place, the little one was thrilled and immediately pointed at a luxury apartment complex demanding Ha-jun buy a unit there. What the hell, kid? Do you have any idea how expensive a place like that is? At the very least, it's got to be around 20 billion won. Right on cue, Lucio reminded him about the money he made from the pyramid delivery. Clearly, with his current financial standing, he could easily afford a luxury apartment. But the problem is that poor man's mentality is deep-rooted in his blood. So our guy still thinks he's at the bottom of society. In the end, he decided to take Lucio to check out a few places just to see. Sure enough, real estate for the rich is on a different level. Not only was the place spacious, but all the furniture was incredibly high-end and absolutely reeked of money. Plus, the building was newly constructed, so it was highly sought after. After listening to the agent's pitch, Ha-jun didn't commit right away. He wanted to look at a few other places. He dragged Lucio away to keep her from causing a scene, but just as he reached the door, he ran into someone he knew. That day, he and Lucio spent the whole time touring apartments before finally settling on one he liked for 17 billion won to settle down. Everything there was fantastic. He even managed to haggle for a pretty good price, so he was very satisfied. However, there was one thing bothering Ha-jun, the girl living next door whom he'd run into in the hallway. The moment he saw her that morning, he realized she was the same girl he'd crossed paths with in the Tartarus dungeon. Luckily, he'd been wearing a full-face helmet back then, so she had absolutely no clue who he was. Of course, to Ha-jun, that wasn't the most important thing right now, because the real problem he needed to focus on was that it had been 2 days and he hadn't received a single delivery order from the gods. Even though the little old soul Lucio warned him not to be too greedy, the reality was he'd just dropped a huge sum of money on a house. And there were still tons of things to pay for furniture appliances and a mountain of fees like maintenance, security, and utilities. If he didn't start working hard to earn more money now, it wouldn't be long before he was drowning in massive debt. Worst case, he'd have to sell the new house and end up on the street. Just thinking about it made the guy feel absolutely hopeless. After hearing Ha-jun explain that he'd blown the budget on the house and that they'd both have to work like dogs to pay off the debt, little Lucio finally panicked. Even the budget for her candy might get cut to save money, which broke her heart. Immediately, Lucio started racking her brain to solve their financial problem, with Ha-jun determined not to let that worst-case scenario happen. Then she had a bright idea, that they could go door to door to advertise their delivery service. Since there's no law saying they have to sit at home waiting for work to come to them, the best way was to take matters into their own hands, go out and get work themselves. Plus, Lucio was sure that if they asked, Hephaestus would lend them a hand by promoting their delivery service to other gods, or heroes on Mount Olympus. Ha-jun heard this and thought it was a great idea, but he had one question for her. How were they supposed to get to the top of Olympus to advertise? Because normally he could only get up there when he had a delivery order. Lucio's face went blank when she heard that. Turns out she hadn't thought of that part. Meanwhile, the Young One Hunter Team, Team 1 and Team 2 had fully assembled with a total of 45 hunters ready to head to Busan for the mission. After the captain Seo-jun gave his impassioned speech, everyone felt like they'd been pumped full of adrenaline. They were extremely excited and eager to join the battlefield to slay monsters. On the helicopter, Aaron told Seo-jun that she had found the mysterious delivery guy. And the person he's been missing all this time is actually the new neighbor who just moved in next door. When he heard this, Seo-jun was incredibly shocked. He honestly found it hard to believe. But seeing Aaron so firm about it, he had no choice but to accept the truth. The whole team had wasted so much time, money, and effort looking for someone who was right under their noses. Still, with this information from Aaron, June felt sure they wouldn't hit any more snags in tracking down that mysterious delivery guy. For now, the urgent mission the team had to focus on was how to clear out the Busan dungeon. Actually, it wasn't just Seo-jun and Do-yun. Even the cold-hearted girl Aaron was looking forward to meeting and interacting with Ha-jun in the future. Meanwhile, on the other side, Ha-jun and Lucio had magically managed to find the home of Hephaestus, but unfortunately he wasn't home. So Ha-jun guessed that the guy wasn't working today. Seeing that the little girl grew anxious and uneasy, terrified of getting punished, just like when they were back at the pyramid with that pharaoh woman. Luckily, just then, Hephaestus returned. As soon as he saw him, Ha-jun immediately rushed over to start a conversation, expressing that the reason he came here was to ask for his help with a tiny favor. Of course, he didn't come here empty-handed. He made sure to bring the soju that Hephaestus loves most as a bribe. With that, talking things over became much easier. So Ha-jun got straight to the point and asked him to recommend his delivery service to other gods. Honestly, this was child's play for Hephaestus. He even knew an acquaintance who was in desperate need of Ha-jun's services, but he acted vague and hinted that since this person was extremely dangerous, he didn't want the kid to take the risk. Hearing that Ha-jun took the bait and immediately begged him to let him take the order no matter what. Seeing that Ha-jun had taken the hook, Hephaestus quickly shifted gears and used his divine powers to express ship him to a mysterious primordial forest. Everything happened so fast that Ha-jun didn't even realize he had arrived at such a strange place until it was too late. While he was still confused, his delivery app suddenly sounded a high-level danger alert. He startled and turned around only to realize that he had unluckily wandered right into the crosshairs of a massive, gigantic wild boar monster charging at him like a bullet. By the time he realized how much trouble he was in, it was too late to run. But when luck runs out, fate takes over. Just when Ha-jun thought he was about to meet his maker, a mysterious figure hiding in the bushes suddenly appeared to handle the monster and save his skin. It all happened so fast he didn't have a clue what the hell was going on. Just as he was standing there dumbfounded, Lucio suddenly jumped out of a nearby bush. Seeing the look of pure annoyance on the little girl's face, he immediately guessed that Hephaestus had sent her there on purpose. But the most important question now was, who the heck took out that monster? Since Lucio had only just arrived, there's no way she could have taken it down, and Ha-jun certainly didn't have the skills for that. Just then, an uncle with a ripped six-pack body suddenly appeared and admitted he was the one who had just taken action. But the thing is, this uncle wasn't exactly human. He was a centaur half-man and half-horse. Ha-jun hadn't even processed the situation when the delivery app suddenly chimed to announce that he had arrived at the delivery location. This meant the half-man, half-horse guy right in front of him was none other than today's customer. Seeing a stranger suddenly pop up in his territory, the man walked over to question them. Ha-jun was about to answer, but little Lucio suddenly tugged him back and explained that she knew who this was. It turned out the person standing right in front of them was Chiron the Centaur mentor to great heroes like Jason of the Argonauts, the hero of the Trojan War, Achilles, and the server's top-ranked warrior Heracles. Looking at the disciples Chiron had personally trained and mentored, you can easily tell just how insanely powerful he is. However, like many other eccentric gods, when Chiron heard Lucio accidentally drop the name of his student Heracles, he suddenly flew into a blind rage and drew his bow ready to blow both of them to smithereens. Seeing that things were about to go south, Ha-jun hurriedly explained that he was a delivery person sent by Hephaestus. But even after hearing that, Chiron didn't stop. He fired an arrow straight at Ha-jun and Lucio. Luckily, thanks to his high-end protective gear, they barely managed to escape with their lives. If not, both of them would have been holding hands on their way to the underworld to have tea with Hades. Afterward, Ha-jun had to explain for a long time to convince Chiron to trust him. Thinking it over, Chiron felt that what the kid said was likely true because, after all, it wasn't a coincidence that Hephaestus would reveal his name to someone else. On the other hand, even though Ha-jun looked a bit scruffy and didn't look like a hero in the slightest, he did have a minor goddess with him, and minor goddesses often traveled with heroes as companions. After thinking it over, Chiron finally decided to tentatively trust them and spare their lives. Seeing that the short-tempered uncle had calmed down, he breathed a sigh of relief and seized the opportunity to pitch his delivery service. It was probably the first time he'd ever heard of it, so Chiron seemed a bit hesitant at first, but in the end, he decided to give it a try. He handed Ha-jun a glass vial and gave him directions from here. Go straight north through the forest and you'll find a large cave. Head there. All you need to do is head inside and snag some saliva from the lazy bum sleeping in there. That's it. Ha-jun was pretty surprised by such a bizarre request from Karen, so he asked for confirmation and got a firm answer from the guy even though he felt like something was a little off. But since he's just trying to make a living, Ha-jun had to grit his teeth and take the job. He quickly hauled little Lucio along to make the delivery, but he had no idea that this wasn't just some normal delivery. It was actually a little test from Karen to see if the kid was trustworthy. And of course, the road ahead wasn't going to be easy at all. Karen even showed pure contempt when he saw the poor fool charging off without any preparation at all. He was truly reckless for rushing into that cave. He had no clue about the dangers lurking inside. Even if he could safely pass the forest ahead, he'd still have to face the snowy mountain ranges, the kind of treacherous peaks that no mere mortal could ever cross. However, while Karen was still standing there looking like he'd already predicted the outcome, Ha-jun suddenly launched into the sky at light speed and just zoomed away, leaving the old man standing there dumbfounded with no clue what the hell was happening. Turns out the kid used the skills from his protective suit to hack the game and blast past the forest and the mountains. He didn't waste much stamina or time. Soon, Ha-jun and Lucio reached the cave Karen had mentioned, but unfortunately he'd used up too much of the suit's allowed time for the day, so from now on, they were on their own. On top of that, little Lucio was feeling dizzy and nauseous from that roller coaster ride through the forest and mountains earlier, so Ha-jun had to wait a bit for her to get her act together before they could enter the cave. Even though they'd gone quite deep inside, the weird thing was, Ha-jun didn't see any creature sleeping anywhere, just like Karen said. The deeper they went, the gloomier and damper the air got since no sunlight could reach them. Every once in a while, the sound of dripping water would scare the life out of little Lucio. She nearly peed her pants. It proved there was practically nothing in here, let alone a living creature. While he wasn't looking little, Lucio suddenly screamed her lungs out and fell backward as if she'd seen something terrifying. At first, he just thought she was being dramatic, getting scared by a few bugs or the sound of water dripping. But very quickly after that, he seemed to realize something, too. Something was seriously wrong when he heard those weird hissing sounds. It wasn't until the guy shined his flashlight that he freaked out, discovering a massive swarm of snakes staring back with friendly smiles, the kind of optimistic, reality-shattering smiles. At this point, Ha-jun could only start chanting his prayers. Ain't no time for fighting. Meanwhile, over on the other side, Karen was actually dragging his lame horse leg across the rough mountain rocks. Turns out Ha-jun's leap earlier was so insanely supernatural that he wanted to come to the cave himself to test the kid's skills once more. After all, it's hard to believe a mortal has power on par with the gods. Just then, Karen spotted a huge crack in the ground that looked like it was left by Ha-jun when he took off for that jump. Clearly, his strength must be monstrous to leave a mark that big. On the other hand, Karen seemed to realize something important, so he immediately released his mana. 1 second he was limping on his lame horse leg, and the next he turned into a Super Saiyan. Screw his aching leg. He flew straight up into the sky. Not only that, but he was flying and praying in his heart, hoping Ha-Jun wouldn't get into any trouble in that cave. However, Karen didn't know that thanks to him, Ha-Jun and Lucio were about to become a late-afternoon snack for those snakes. Tears were falling, and it was game over. Ha-Jun could only put his all into running for it now. Divine deliveries don't mean a thing right now. Survival is the only paradise. Luckily, he and Lucio found a hidden corner to temporarily hide from their sight. Just then, Lucio suddenly warned Ha-Jun that the massive snakes in front of them were actually Hydra, the monster with 9 snake heads, famous in Greek mythology. After that, the little one scolded him for taking Karen's job, which led both of them into this mess. But it wasn't entirely his fault, because that shady old guy clearly went out of his way not to tell them the truth from the start. If he'd known he had to go get saliva from a monster that terrifying, he wouldn't have taken the job even if he had 10 times the guts. But heaven never closes all doors. Luckily, in the middle of his headache trying to figure out how to escape the app's system, suddenly popped up and gave him a suggestion advising him to use a special service for emergencies. Of course, the price wasn't friendly at all. 5,000 points equivalent to 50 million won. Still, Ha-Jun had to grit his teeth and pay up because he had no other choice. Right after the transaction was complete, he received a replica of Kini. To make it worth the money he'd spent instead of running away from the cave, the guy decided to play it risky and went to harvest the poison from the Hydra's fangs. Little Lucio saw him risking his life like that and immediately warned him that the Hydra wasn't just any monster, it was the offspring of the snake god Typhon. Its venom is so dangerous that even the gods on Mount Olympus would steer clear of it, let alone an ordinary guy like Ha-Jun. But at this point, Ha-Jun wasn't scared of a damn thing anymore. High risk, high reward. If you don't take the shot, you don't get the prize. So ignoring Lucio's protests, he was dead set on pushing forward. Seeing the kid was being so stubborn, and just wouldn't listen, the little brat got all huffy and stormed out. Before she left, that sassy mouth didn't forget to curse him, hoping the Hydra's venom would melt his skin and bones. Ha-Jun was speechless after hearing that, but since it was just a kid talking, he decided not to take it to heart. Once he saw the dead weight Lucio had finally cleared out, he could finally focus on the mission. Even though he had protective gear and invisibility on, he still moved as carefully as he could, making sure not to tip off the monster. After all, this is a permadeath game. One slip-up and it's game over. Especially since he'd gotten so close to the Hydra to collect its venom, he was so tense he didn't even dare to breathe. After a while, once the vial was full, Ha-Jun finally let his guard down. But just as he was about to head back, things went south. The cave suddenly shook violently. It knocked Ha-Jun off balance and he dropped the vial, shattering it. To make matters worse, he accidentally touched the Hydra and they locked eyes. He was so terrified he even forgot his own language, but contrary to what he expected, this monster actually started speaking. Not only that, but it could sense his presence and his invisibility cloak through his scent. By now, Ha-Jun had started to calm down. Because he realized the monster in front of him, or rather the mysterious figure hidden in the shadows behind those little Hydras, seemed to have no intention of hurting him. It asked why he had dared to come here. Ha-Jun felt hopeless. If he told the truth, there was a high chance he'd be sent straight to Hades. As if being stressed wasn't enough, Ha-Jun had to deal with those chatty little Hydras too. Seeing the replica item of Kini, which belonged to Hades, they mistook him for someone sent by Hades from Tartarus. Seeing Ha-Jun stay silent, the mysterious figure asked why he wouldn't answer their voice, carrying a hint of pressure and intimidation. It made a coward like Ha-Jun break out in a cold sweat. Finally backed into a corner, he bluffed and claimed he was actually from Tartarus. He said he was there to check on them. The mysterious figure was a bit surprised and asked, "Are you really here to check on me?" "Oh my god, Severus must have sent you, right?" Hearing that, Ha-Jun answered immediately without thinking, Yeah, that's right. Severus was probably worried since he hadn't heard from you in a while, so he asked me to come check on things." How you could tell it was a total lie just by listening. But he had no idea why that person believed him, and they even came out of the shadows to talk about Severus. Meanwhile, little Lucio had left the cave, and immediately used her tiny wings to fly off for backup. On one hand, she was frustrated that Ha-Jun wouldn't listen. On the other, she knew for a fact that Ha-Jun didn't stand a chance against a Hydra, and would definitely meet his maker if they fought. Luckily, on the way, Lucio ran into Karen. He was also rushing toward the cave to save Ha-Jun. Seeing Lucio appear alone, he immediately understood what was going on. But the problem is, He didn't seem to have any relationship with the Hydra, so this was going to be tough to resolve. But seeing Lucio all teary-eyed and worried sick about Hajun, Karen felt a bit guilty because, after all, this was all his fault. He should have sent both of them home, instead of trying to test Hajun like this. With no other choice, Karen had to unleash his power once more to save Hajun from being eaten by the Hydra. Back on the other side, Hajun was still in shock that the character he'd been talking to was actually a girl, not some snake monster like he'd imagined. Perhaps his expression was too obvious because the Hydra explained that she hadn't been able to take her true form since being sealed. Here, and even her brother had never seen this form, so he didn't know. It was only at this moment that Hajun realized why. The Hydra acted so happy whenever Severus the three-headed hellhound was mentioned. Turns out they were long-lost siblings. The Hydra then continued to ask Hajun about her brother's recent situation since they hadn't been in touch for a long time. But since Hajun didn't know a damn thing, he had to keep bluffing to save his own neck. Luckily, he remembered details about Severus from his last trip to Tartarus, so it wasn't too hard to convince the Hydra to believe the fictional stories he was making up. Seeing that he had successfully fooled the Hydra, and to avoid dragging this out until he eventually slipped up, Hajun boldly asked to leave, saying he was busy. But before he could even move, the Hydra's attitude behind him did a complete 180. One moment, she's all friendly and chatty. Then she switches to that terrifyingly serious look, scaring the living daylights out of our faint-hearted hero. But really, Hydra just wanted to give him a gift. A single scale from her back just to show her thanks. Even Hajun didn't see that move coming. He was so stunned, he just stood there like a statue. It wasn't until Hydra nudged him that he snapped out of it. Turns out this isn't just a regular snake scale. It's an item infused with magical power that could come in handy. She gave it to him because it will be a huge help on his future journeys. In a way, this scale is just like the hairs of Sun. Wukong, you know, they're both magical items plucked straight from the bodies of gods. Hey, if the goods are being served on a silver platter, why not take them? Seeing Hydra so eager to offer it, he didn't bother refusing. Still, it was his first time. Pulling a scale off a god's body, so Hajun was a bit tense, worried he might slip up and hurt the beauty. So he decided to use a skill from his protective gear to make a clean break. With a few quick, deft moves, Hajun successfully snagged the scale from Hydra's back. Everything was going swimmingly, except for the part where he lost his balance from the tension and accidentally fell right on top of Hydra. Talk about an awkward situation. As if that wasn't enough, in walks the old man Karen, who immediately jumps to the wrong conclusion. In his eyes, it looked like Hajun was bullying poor Hydra. Little Lucio, who had followed Karen, was so relieved to see Hajun in one piece that she rushed over and hugged him, crying like she was mourning her own great-grandfather. Hajun took the opportunity to tease her, completely unaware that he had just made a jaw-dropping impression on Karen. Because in reality, Hydra is even stronger than the student he's most proud of. Hakin. After teasing little Lucio to his heart's content, Hajun finally remembered Hydra was still there. He quickly turned to apologize for the noise and introduced Lucio as his neighbor so things wouldn't be so awkward. Of course, Hydra didn't seem to care much about things. I like that. Because the appearance of a big shot like Karen was what really caught her attention. From Hydra's words, Hajun learned a shocking truth. That is, Karen has lost his immortal, ageless body after being poisoned by Hydra in the past. Even his lame leg never healed because of it. Seeing Hajun so curious, Lucio finally told him about the bitter history between Hydra and Karen. It turns out that back in the day, Hecate used an arrow tipped with Hydra's poison to ambush Karen, and that's what cost him his status. However, the truth isn't as simple as everyone thinks, because for Karen, that incident was actually an accident, or more accurately, karma for creating a monster. After being hit by Hecate's arrow, Karen couldn't bear the agonizing pain caused by Hydra's poison. So he went to beg the supreme ruler of Mount Olympus, also known as the Greek king of bedroom activities, to take back his immortality so he could finally find peace. But Zeus refused, forcing him to keep living. On one hand, he had to endure the pain of the poison. On the other, he had to suffer the aging of his body. Karen went from being the top-tier centaur of Olympus to a fallen, crippled has-been remembered only in myths. Furthermore, Hydra's poison is basically a death sentence for any living thing. Even gods can't escape it if they're hit. So Hydra was quite surprised to see Karen, still standing there alive. The two of them have never liked each other, so when they met again, Hydra couldn't help but jab at Karen a few times, making him furious. She didn't stop there. She turned to ask who Hajun was, then casually reached into her chest to rummage for something, leaving Hajun and Lucio staring in shocked silence. The sight was so awkward that Lucio had to cover Hajun's eyes. After a moment, Hydra pulled out a glass vial, containing her venom, and laid her cards on the table. She had known all along that Karen was behind Ha-jun's visit. Despite not liking the horseman standing before her, Hydra decided to give him her venom anyway. She wanted to clear the air with Karen once and for all and remind him that she wasn't the one who truly ruined him. It was Hecate. Ha-jun was stunned to hear this because, as far as he knew, Hecate was one of Karen's most brilliant students. Then Hydra stepped toward Karen to show her sincerity, hoping he would let go of their past grudges. In the end, Karen chose to trust her. He took the vial and downed it all in one go in front of everyone. Immediately, his body reacted violently. He looked like he was in agony, then suddenly collapsed. Ha-jun and Lucio were horrified, thinking Hydra had betrayed them and was taking Karen out for good. But the very next second, Karen's crippled leg miraculously healed as if it had never been injured. After 3,895 years, Karen had finally regained his full power. He no longer had to endure that pain for even a second longer. This meant that Karen's life at rock bottom had officially ended. A new chapter was about to begin. Karen even shed tears of happiness because that persistent pain had completely vanished. Seeing him so emotional, Hydra stepped forward. I actually thought Hydra had turned on him and finished Karen off right there. But the very next second, Karen's crippled leg suddenly healed as if it had never been injured at all. After more than 3,895 days, Karen had finally regained his strength. And without having to endure that pain for another second, it also meant that Karen's life at the very bottom of society had officially come to an end. How long? A new chapter of his life was about to begin. Karen even shed tears of happiness because that persistent pain had completely vanished. Seeing him so moved, Hydra stepped forward. After settling all the grudges and misunderstandings, Karen gently comforted them, but wouldn't let Ha-jun and Lucio leave just yet, insisting they stay at his place and wait. Ha-jun initially thought Karen was trying to lowball his delivery fee, but little Lucio got annoyed the moment she heard him complaining and snapped back at him. She pointed out that a supreme god like Karen would never stoop to something so unsightly. Besides, Hydra was the one who handed the poison to Karen, so Ha-jun didn't lift a finger to earn any payment. Lucio was so dead on that Ha-jun couldn't even bring himself to argue, forced to endure her nagging. Ha-jun waited for quite a while until Karen finally returned with an item in his hand. It turns out he kept them waiting so long just to find this. It was a bow meant for Ha-jun. Karen had originally intended it for Hakeem, but now he felt Ha-jun was a much better fit than that jerk. He wanted to pass it on to him, but Ha-jun was a bit disappointed, thinking that as a mere mortal, he couldn't use a god's weapon anyway. He would have much preferred gold as a tip. Still, it was better than nothing. Ha-jun respectfully accepted the bow from Karen, but suddenly an uninvited guest burst into the house just at that moment. Everyone initially thought it was an enemy ambush, but it turned out to be Ares, the god of war. Ha-jun, still clueless, didn't realize who Ares really was. So he nonchalantly asked a clueless question. Wait, is Ares that guy known as the Brat of Mount Olympus? Lucio hurriedly warned him to watch his tongue because Ares wasn't like any god they had encountered before. He was a true blue legacy hire on Olympus with Zeus, the king of the gods, and notorious playboy as his father, and the jealous Hera as his mother. To put it simply, Ares was a major powerhouse with serious connections that they shouldn't mess with. After storming into Karen's house and confirming Ha-jun's identity, Ares suddenly lunged forward and knelt right in front of him, begging for help, leaving Ha-jun completely stunned and frozen, thinking, what the heck is going on? Seriously, Ha-jun, a 27-year-old delivery guy, had officially become the first human to make a god kneel and beg for assistance. It sounded pretty epic, to be honest. In another turn of events, after finishing the delivery for Karen, Ha-jun and Lucio headed home on the high-speed train. Since it was her first time experiencing such a fancy high-tech mode of transportation, little Lucio was extremely excited and noisy, forcing Ha-jun to tell her to keep it down so they wouldn't bother the other passengers while he was just trying to chill on the ride. While he was relaxing, his delivery app pinged with a notification that his account had just received 100,000 points from Karen, bringing his total to 388,700 points. Ha-jun was so thrilled he couldn't help but yell out loud, getting told off by the passengers again. Even though Lucio teased him, he was still happy because the money made it all worth it. Just from one delivery for Karen, he'd raked in 2 billion won. Even Bill Gates would have to bow down to this earning speed, though he still couldn't fully relax yet. That was because he still had the order from Ares ahead, or rather the request Ares had made back at Karen's place. It turned out the reason Ares had knelt before Ha-jun was that he needed him to rescue a hunter linked to him after Ares had checked the thread of fate. He discovered that the hunter was going to log out today. Hajun was confused, wondering if Ares already knew the hunter's fate. Why didn't he just go save the person himself instead of asking a mortal like him? Lucio explained that doing so would violate the law of causality. Specifically, all gods were forbidden from interfering directly in human life and death, and this rule was absolute under any circumstances. So forget Ares, even his dad. Zeus wouldn't dare break that rule. Because the situation was so dire, Charon had actually advised Ares to rethink his options. Even as the god of war, he knew the gravity of the situation. Yet even knowing it violated the law of causality, Ares was adamant about saving that hunter at all costs. Even if it meant kneeling and begging Hajun, because that wasn't just any regular hunter, it was a divine hunter. In reality, even though the gods couldn't interfere too much in human lives due to the law of causality, they could still grant power to certain hunters through a pact, and once those hunters fully awakened, achieved great feats and became famous through the praises of the people, the gods would also benefit through the pact, sometimes reaping rewards many times greater than what they initially invested. However, everything comes with a price, and if a hunter kicks the bucket before finishing their mission, the god who signed the pact would also be implicated and face unimaginable consequences. In layman's terms, the troublemaker Ares had bet his entire fortune on this gamble, and was now facing a major risk of going bust. Hajun was speechless, and Charon was shocked that Ares was reckless enough to pull something like this. Not only that this guy had invested his old man's entire assets at home into this one gamble, he was basically one step away from mortgaging the deed to Olympus itself. And if the truth came out and the old man, Zeus, found out about this, Ares would be absolutely finished. That was exactly why he had come all the way here to beg Hajun for help. Hajun felt like, great, now I'm basically a servant for all of Olympus. If it weren't for the massive payout on this delivery, he wouldn't have touched a crazy gamble like this with a 10-foot pole. But regardless, since you already gave your word to Ares, you've got to find a way to settle this quickly, or things are going to get complicated, maybe even worse because of this. Hajun splurged on a bullet train to get to Busan as fast as possible, where the target he needs to protect is currently located. Meanwhile, in another turn of events, the Young One Hunter team, Seo-jun, is facing countless dangerous monsters inside the dungeon, and it looks like they're losing the upper hand with everyone exhausted and pretty banged up. Only Seo-jun still has the strength to fight back and protect the others. After a series of skillful sword strikes, he finally wipes out more than half of the monsters. Plus, with Eren helping out, things seem temporarily under control. Afterward, Seo-jun decides to let the team take a breather to recharge. Only then will they continue to clear the area. While resting, he chats with a teammate about their strategy, though it seems the dungeon they're conquering is actually much tougher than they originally predicted. Even though the whole team barely made it this far, the truth is they're only halfway there. It'll probably take forever to reach the boss, not to mention actually defeating it. Still, they're feeling pretty confident thanks to their numbers today. If all goes well, clearing out the monsters on the way shouldn't be a problem. After resting, the team moves out and quickly reaches the final floor of the dungeon. Just step through this door, kill the boss, and they'll finish the mission and finally head home. Of course, it's extremely dangerous work. So before officially stepping in, Seo-jun, as the leader, reminds all his members to be extra careful in the fight. To be safe, he even insists on leading the way. But as the door swings wide open, they don't see any boss at all. Seeing that the place is empty, Seo-jun starts to doubt if this is actually the boss's lair. He and Eren boldly step inside to check it out, but they've only taken a few steps when Eren suddenly notices something. Something's not right. She immediately yells at everyone to run, but it's too late to turn back now. A split second later, a massive amount of mysterious fluid starts raining down, splattering all over them. Watching the horrific scene unfold, Seo-jun turns to interrogate Oh Seo-ong. What on earth is this stuff? Why wasn't it mentioned in his report? But the thing he never expected was a disgusting tentacled creature that had been parasitizing Oh Seo-ong's body for a long time, now crawling out of his mouth while whispering strange things. Mom, I've brought them here, just like you asked. At this point, Seo-jun realizes this was a trap set by the boss to lure them all in. Meanwhile, Hajun and Lucio have just arrived at the entrance. They're about to step into the dungeon, so who knows if Seo-jun down there can carry his grandson through this disaster or not. Unlike previous times, Hajun decided to leave Lucio behind because of the high danger level in the dungeon. The little lady wouldn't have it and threw a tantrum demanding to go. So he had to use the power of capitalism to bribe her. When she first got the money, she was still stubborn and threw it right in his face, but Hajun patiently explained that with that much money, she could buy 50 candies. As soon as she heard candy, her eyes lit up like car headlights, and she immediately changed her mind. And just like that, our guy successfully convinced Lucio to stay outside and wait so he could enter the dungeon with peace of mind. This is Ha-Jun's first time stepping foot in here. It's all foreign to him, and with the lack of light, he has to stumble around for a while just to find the path. Not only is he lost, but he's also unlucky enough to step in poop, and then he accidentally discovers hundreds of monster body parts scattered all over the cave. Luckily, he's been through so many traumatizing situations before that. When facing this scene, he still manages to keep his cool. An average delivery guy would have probably peed his pants. Looking at the leftover signs of a fight, he guesses it was likely caused by the hunter that Aris entrusted the job to, and that he's probably in trouble with the monsters here. Regardless, the most important thing is to find that hunter as soon as possible. But the problem is, his protective gear still hasn't reset after he used it yesterday, so he can't use his family skills. To make matters worse, he didn't even bring his delivery steed today. Just when Ha-Jun is wondering how to handle this, the delivery app sends a notification suggesting he buy emergency supplies from the shop. He gets his hopes up a little, but reality hits him like a brick. After looking at the prices of the items on the portal, Ha-Jun is absolutely devastated. Who in their right mind charges 100,000 points for a bike? That's like $1 billion. You can tell just by looking that it's a scam. And of course, for a guy who just escaped poverty like Ha-Jun, how could he ever bring himself to spend that much money just to buy a motorbike? After that, he moved on and kept scrolling through the app, looking to see if there was anything with a better price tag. But just as he was focused on browsing, that little brat Lucio snuck up behind him and scared the living daylights out of him, causing him to accidentally click the wrong button to select an item. Ha-Jun immediately turned to scold Lucio, asking why the heck she came running in here. But despite his questioning, the little brat talked back with a cheeky attitude. Right then, the Tai Kong motorcycle from the delivery app was express shipped right in front of them. Sure enough, you get what you pay for. This bike was the latest limited edition, looking 100 times cooler and more high-end than Ha-Jun's beat-up piece of junk at home. So just by looking at it, Ha-Jun was head over heels, completely forgetting about that 1 billion won that just went down the drain. However, before either of them could even react, a swarm of monsters showed up out of nowhere. Probably because they'd been so loud, they drew the monsters' attention. The moment they met the friendly gaze of those monsters, both Lucio and Ha-Jun hopped onto the Tai Kong bike and took off in a flash, terrified that if they were any slower, not even their scraps would be left. Over on the other side, except for Seo-Jun, the whole team had fallen into a trap and lost their ability to fight. Luckily, he still had enough strength to dodge the monsters' attacks. As he carefully observed his surroundings again, he was shocked to realize that the entire cave was actually part of the monster itself. It was clearly completely different from any type of monster he had ever encountered before. Even in the Hunter Association's database, there was no record of a monster with the bizarre ability to manipulate and control human bodies like this. So given the situation, Seo-Jun realized deep down that he absolutely could not let this monster escape the dungeon, and it was best to finish it off right there to prevent any future trouble. Aaron, having been careless earlier, had also gotten trapped, but fortunately she still had some consciousness and strength left. To break free from the monster, Seo-Jun saw this and immediately ran over to check if she was all right. Actually, Aaron had only been trapped for a short while, so she wasn't seriously affected. With the strength she had left, she could still continue fighting alongside Seo-Jun. Because the situation was extremely urgent, and the longer they waited, the more their teammates would suffer, the two of them quickly rushed in to engage the monster in combat. Right then and there, while Aaron surged forward to grab its attention, Seo-Jun seized the opportunity to strike its weak point. Since it was the deciding blow, he poured all his energy, even his divine power, into it. However, after a massive explosion, the monster was still standing there, grinning, leaving Seo-Jun completely stunned. As if he couldn't believe his own eyes, Aaron seemed to notice something was off and immediately snapped at him, telling him not to just sit there in a daze. But unfortunately, Seo-Jun was totally drained from that last attack. He couldn't even stand up, let alone think about counterattacking the monster. Aaron didn't want to just give up like that. However, before she could do anything, the monster began its next wave of attacks, ready to wipe both of them out. They thought for sure this trip was a one-way ticket to the afterlife. So they basically said, screw it, and accepted their fate. But just at that life-or-death moment, Ha-Jun and Lucio came drifting on that motorcycle, unexpectedly launching out from the monster's very own eye, leaving both Aaron and Seo-Jun in shock, like what on earth just happened, and it didn't stop there. Before landing, Ha-Jun casually pulled off some sick drifting turns. His skills were on par with the street racers at Taeho. I'm telling you, it was incredibly cool. Even though Seo-Jun and Aaron had been through countless bloody battles in dungeons, this was probably the first and only time in their lives that they had witnessed such a world-shattering scene. And there was more. Little Lucio suddenly debuted with a rugged, street boy look that couldn't have been more badass. Seo-jun and Aaron were left speechless, totally at a loss for words. After that, this little troublemaker didn't stop, but while she was busy bragging, she was suddenly grabbed by the monster parasite inside. Oh Se-ong, and was scared out of her wits, nearly sending her soul flying to Mount Olympus. Luckily, Ha-jun appeared just in time and snatched the monster before it could hurt Lucio. And those other two. After that, Ha-jun showed Seo-jun and Aaron what a true tough guy looks like, by using his bare hands to pull the parasite out of Oh Se-ong's body. Seo-jun was like, "Oh, so those little pests? If you guys can't handle it, just leave it to me." However, before he could finish bragging, the giant monster above began to stir, preparing for its second attack. One look at this thing, and Ha-jun knew he had zero chance of winning. But then again, his mission was to save people and deliver goods, not to kill monsters, so thinking about it, it wasn't a huge deal. Right after that, he turned and asked which of the two was Park Seo-jun, the divine hunter of Aries, and told him to raise his hand. After the guy confirmed, he quickly ran over to Seo-jun to check if he had any injuries. On top of that, Ha-jun still had the audacity to ask some clueless questions like, "Hey, have we met somewhere before? I don't know why, but you look so familiar, man." Oh, I remember now. It was back in the Tataros dungeon. I think we met there. This world is really small, isn't it? Teacher Ha-jun isn't just oblivious. He doesn't even realize how serious the situation is, acting like it's all a joke. Seo-jun was getting desperate and couldn't help but order him and Aaron to team up and take down the boss immediately or they'd be in serious trouble. But contrary to Seo-jun's expectations, Ha-jun bluntly refused to join, claiming he had nothing to do with this battle. Which actually sounds pretty reasonable since he really is just a delivery guy. Meanwhile, Seo-jun is the actual hunter entrusted by Ares, directly responsible for killing the monster. Plus, Ha-jun doesn't even have any divine power or superpowers. His protective gear is still recovering, so how is he supposed to fight? Is he supposed to kill the monster with nothing but hope? Seeing that Ha-jun really had no intention of helping, little Aaron went crazy, questioning how he could dare to treat human lives so lightly, and then she drew her blade. She took a stance as if she were ready to finish him off. Ha-jun guessed she must have misunderstood, so he hurried to explain that he meant for Seo-jun to handle the monster himself. Not that the young man was absolutely stunned, like, "Are you kidding me? How on earth am I supposed to do that alone? Besides, my weapon was just..." Before Seo-jun could finish, Ha-jun pulled out his phone and immediately ordered a brand new item from Ares. To the absolute shock and disbelief of both Aaron and Seo-jun, especially Seo-jun, because the moment that item appeared, he realized it was the sword. The legendary divine sword of the god of war, Ares, a holy weapon capable of ending any war. And just like that, Ha-jun successfully delivered it. Seo-jun hears the item Ares sent. "I can head home now." But before he could even leave, the guy grabbed him, desperate to ask, "Who sent this sword and how on earth could you easily enter the dungeon when you aren't even a hunter?" Facing Seo-jun's barrage of questions, Ha-jun remained completely calm. He modestly told him that he was just a slightly special delivery guy and that he could call him a courier for the gods. With that said, he hopped on his bike and rode off, leaving Aaron and Seo-jun full of questions. Even though they weren't satisfied with his answer, their main priority was still taking down the boss, so Seo-jun couldn't afford to chase him. He had to stay and fight. Luckily this time he had the divine sword of Ares to support him, so things seemed much simpler. Being a VIP player is definitely different from free-to-play. Seo-jun just swung the sword a few times and fully entered his awakened state. Aaron, watching from the side, didn't understand what was happening. She only knew that Seo-jun had reached a whole new level thanks to the energy, constantly radiating from his body. Naturally, Seo-jun felt the change too, and victory was within reach. Without hesitation, he launched a finishing move at the monster, and after a massive explosion, the creature was completely wiped out. He even blew the roof of the dungeon off with a single strike of his sword. But before they could even celebrate, Seo-jun suddenly reverted to his original state and collapsed. Luckily, it turned out he was just exhausted, not seriously injured, although it was all over now. And their team had officially completed the mission to conquer the S-rank dungeon. Yet in the hearts of both Aaron and Seo-jun, there were many lingering thoughts whenever they remembered the mysterious delivery guy in blue. Not long after the news reported the incident in the dungeon in Busan that day, the highlight was the heroic feat of Captain Seo-jun. However, the protagonist of the news report didn't seem too happy because of some guy on a bike who, claimed to be a courier for the gods. In reality, Seo-jun knew that he and his team wouldn't have made it back alive, let alone defeated the monster, if that delivery guy hadn't shown up. On the other hand, he was also very curious about the true identity and special abilities of that person. At this moment, Dojun, after hearing the captain was seriously injured, rushed to the hospital at breakneck speed. He thought Seojun was a goner, so he arrived at the door with tears and snot everywhere ready to mourn, but as soon as he saw him perfectly fine, his attitude did a 180. And here I thought it was something terrible. Turns out you're only slightly hurt. In the end, the most important thing to focus on right now was that Seojun had managed to defeat a ridiculously powerful boss all by himself. Then Dojun accidentally noticed the divine sword by the bedside, and since he had never seen that item before, he asked Seojun only to be shocked when he found out. The old sword, worth 100 gold, had been completely destroyed in the fight with the monster. However, unlike Dojun's reaction, Seojun remained calm and explained that, even though he lost his old sword, this divine blade more than makes up for it. Plus, he revealed to Dojun that he had finally met the delivery guy they'd been searching for all this time. Even though the team is used to this by now, that guy Doyen still freaks out and foams at the mouth whenever he hears anything about this mysterious figure. Afterwards, Seojun decided to give Dojun an important mission to track down the delivery guy's address using the info provided. In other words, he'd actually figured out Ha-jun's identity during their run-in at the dungeon, and he was sending Dojun to find him because he wanted to recruit him. Recruiting Ha-jun for their team. Elsewhere, after completing the delivery for Ares, Ha-jun went straight to his palace to report the results, and once he saw that Ha-jun had succeeded and handed over the divine sword to the hunter personally, Ares could finally breathe a sigh of relief. Given the current situation, he could probably keep hiding this from his old folks for a while longer. Since he was so pleased with Ha-jun's service, he decided to give him an extra reward instead of just points. Ares then led Ha-jun and Lucio into his palace. However, when they reached a shrine, he suddenly told Lucio to wait outside and allowed only one person, Ha-jun, to enter with him. Even though he wasn't too thrilled about it, they were guests in someone else's home, so the little guy had no choice but to behave and listen. Next, Ares led Ha-jun deep into the shrine and stopped in front of a massive, colossal door. When Ares opened it, Ha-jun was truly blown away by the sight inside. This room was not only filled to the brim with gold, silver, and jewels, but it also held priceless treasures and pro-level VIP divine artifacts that money couldn't even buy. Truly living up to his reputation as the elite heir of Olympus Prime real estate and high-status parents. Even if he gambled away his house and deed, he'd still have enough billions to burn through for generations. Obviously, this was the first time a broke loser like Ha-jun had ever seen such wealth and luxury dripping with so much cash, so he was pretty hyped for his reward. Originally, Ares wanted to let Ha-jun pick one item from the endless treasure vault, maybe some cash or jewels. But after thinking it over, he felt that the kid's talent deserved something better, so he changed his mind and decided to pick out a valuable gift himself. After rummaging around for a bit, Ares handed Ha-jun a golden box and told him to open it. In reality, Ares had no idea what the hell was inside, but because his old man, Zeus, had handed it to him personally and claimed that the item inside this box was the most priceless possession he owned. Since he received it, he hadn't had the time to open it and see what was inside. So based on what the old man said, there was a high chance it was a one-of-a-kind, priceless treasure. However, Ha-jun just curled his lip in disdain, and when he saw what was inside the box, he was even more disappointed. As it turned out, there wasn't a single thing of value inside, except for a firewood stick that didn't look special at all. Forget Ha-jun, even Ares didn't see that twist coming. He thought, could the old man at home really be pulling such a scam? At this moment, any explanation Ares had became completely meaningless. Ha-jun just thought about how he'd just been scammed and was so pissed he wanted to throw up blood. He couldn't help but grab that stick to whack Ares with it. Save your pathetic excuses, pal. But in the end, Ha-jun had no choice but to begrudgingly accept this precious gift from Ares because the guy had already cashed out all of his reward points, so now he was left with nothing but his own two hands. After some time passed, Ha-jun returned to his normal routine after the delivery for Ares. Between the death-defying deliveries and working himself to the bone like a dog, Ha-jun did have moments to relax and chill with that menace Lucio. While stopping by a convenience store to grab some stuff, he accidentally noticed a poster advertising the upcoming hunter exam. Honestly, becoming a hunter wasn't really his priority. He hadn't even considered it before. But with how things are now, he realized he couldn't keep going in and out of dungeons while hiding his identity forever. So it was very likely that this hunter exam would be his chance to test his limits. After a long, deep sleep until noon, the little menace Lucio finally dragged himself out of bed, just in time for Ha-jun to come home with food. Before he could even sit his butt down, he suddenly received another order from Hephaestus through the Divine Delivery app, not wanting to keep a VIP customer waiting too long. After eating and prepping, Ha-jun rushed with Lucio to Hephaestus's place to pick up the order. By now, both sides could basically be considered close bros, so after exchanging greetings, Hephaestus went straight to the point. Actually, this order wasn't from Hephaestus, but from someone else he had recommended. And Ha-jun's client this time was none other than Jason, the captain of the legendary ship Argo, the boss of a reputable and highly profitable maritime transport service, the #1 in the Olympus server. On top of that, he was known as the great explorer of the Argo expedition, where almost all the crew members were legendary heroes from ancient Greece. Not only that, Jason was a foster son of Hera, which is how he found out about his divine delivery service. No beating around the bush. The moment Jason met Ha-jun, he laid out his request. In reality, his company was currently running into a bit of trouble. More specifically, he and his crew couldn't transport goods through a certain sea area because of the interference and harassment from mermaids. This in itself wasn't exactly surprising. This has happened to sailors many times before whenever they've traveled through these waters. Jason usually contacts another brother of his, the god Orpheus, to come and drive those troublemakers away. But unfortunately, Orpheus is currently away on a business trip far from here and can't make it back right away. So when he heard about Ha-jun's delivery service, he immediately decided to come and ask for help. After hearing Jason out, Ha-jun thought for a moment because based on what he said, this meant he wanted Ha-jun to take care of those mermaids for him. Or perhaps do whatever it takes to get the ship safely through those waters. But for a normal guy like Ha-jun, this is obviously way the hell out of his league. If even gods and legendary heroes can't handle them, what the hell is he supposed to do? Fight a monster? Ha-jun was exhausted just hearing about it. This shipper job has become a jack-of-all-trades role. Everything just lands on him. He wanted to turn down Jason's request, but the amount of money Jason was offering was enough to hire Elon Musk to perform a pole dance. Ha-jun immediately took the job, even though he was a bit worried about having to head way out into the open sea to complete the delivery, but luckily, Hephaestus proactively offered to help him with his magic, so in the end, things didn't seem too bad. Very soon after, Ha-jun and Lucio set sail with Jason toward Melodic, the home of the mermaids. Instead of driving the mermaids away like Jason usually did this time, Ha-jun decided to try a more peaceful approach. He would go to the mermaids himself to negotiate. After hearing his proposal, Jason offered to lend him a boat to get down there, but Ha-jun immediately refused and jumped straight into the sea with Lucio, leaving Jason completely stunned and bewildered. As it turned out, our guy had already prepared a vehicle, a jet ski that could glide over the water. The design was absolutely fire, while the little menace Lucio could just fly around using the tiny wings on his back. So Jason's worries about them were totally unnecessary. While heading to the mermaid lair, Lucio relied on knowledge from his kindergarten days to tell Ha-jun about what they were about to face. In reality, these mermaids aren't as beautiful as the fairy tales make them out to be. They aren't just mere mermaids, all with enchanting voices, but are actually lethal warriors who can take on any enemy, monsters, gods, you name it, as long as it's underwater. Not only that, the mermaid clan's power is shown by their pack hunting habits. They never hunt alone. They always go with their sisters and friends to gang up on their prey. For these reasons, that's why Jason's had to rely on famous heroes like Odysseus of Troy to protect his cargo ships every time they passed through mermaid territory. But this time he was desperate, which is why he had to turn to Ha-jun's service. Actually, Ha-jun had already somewhat guessed the difficulty level, because Jason wouldn't have paid him such a huge sum of money for nothing. Plus, he was prepared to fight back with the stick he got from Ares if they tried anything funny. One of the mermaids, seeing him and Lucio approaching, dove underwater, planning to ambush them and turn them into dinner. But unfortunately for her, Ha-jun was alert and spotted her. The moment she surfaced with her mouth wide open, revealing rows of sharp teeth to bite, Ha-jun quickly pulled out the stick and smacked her one. "You've finally met your match." Even though this stick looked like a piece of junk, it was still a divine item, so its power shouldn't be underestimated. So Ha-jun was pretty confident using it to combat the enemy. However, life isn't a fairy tale. The mermaid acted like nothing happened after taking his hit. By now, the guy realized he'd been had. Oh crap, did that Ares guy scam me? Luckily, he quickly used an item from the shop to disappear from the mermaid's sight just in time, narrowly escaping. Otherwise, this would have been the end of him. Just then, he and Lucio noticed a large shrine behind them. It seemed like this was the mermaid lair, and based on what Jason had said earlier, there was a high chance the mermaid queen was deep inside. Instead of struggling to fight every single one of them, he could settle this quickly by taking down the queen. Even though facing the final boss head-on was pretty risky, Ha-jun had no other choice. To make matters worse, the stick Ares gave him was just a regular stick with zero divine power. Out of options, he had to open the app and go to the shopping section to find another weapon or piece of gear. After browsing for a while, Ha-jun finally chose an item, worth 150,000 points, called the Thunderstone of the Fallen God. He was determined to splurge this time and go all out against those mermaids. Meanwhile, inside the shrine, the mermaid queen already knew about the intruder through reports from her subordinates. One of them asked the queen for permission to hunt, because they hadn't eaten anything in 10 days. However, the mermaid queen immediately rejected this request because Orpheus, the only hero capable of countering them, was currently away. She felt this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to feast. Instead of hunting small groups and making humans suspicious, she thought they should patiently wait for the perfect moment to pull off one massive score, specifically Jason's cargo ship, the Argo, which was about to pass through their waters at any moment. Ha-jun, hidden by his stealth item, was lurking to the side and heard the entire plan. He never expected that this hag could come up with such a sinister scheme, just to turn people into food. Lucio, standing right beside him, agreed with his assessment, looking as if they were going to wipe out the entire crew of the ship. At this point, things were no longer just a simple order or a negotiation that could be settled peacefully. It had become a fight for survival. Since human lives were at stake, Ha-jun had to intervene directly to thwart their plans, and he turned to ask Lucio for a favor, promising that if she did a good job, he'd treat her to a meal even better than the black bean noodles she'd had before. The moment she heard tasty food, the little wild child agreed on the spot. After giving her careful instructions, Ha-jun took off his stealth cloak and put it on Lucio. He sent her off to do her part. Since the cloak's invisibility only worked at close range, he was now completely exposed. This meant every mermaid there could see him. Instead of letting them catch him off guard, he decided to go big and strike first while the iron was hot. "Hey, you mer-bitches! Come and get me if you're so tough!" Honestly, Ha-jun's attitude right now was just peak comedy. Even the mermaid queen, seeing him shaking his butt at her, felt like her eyes were being assaulted. She immediately ordered her minions to capture him. But Ha-jun wasn't stupid enough to just stand there and get caught. Once he'd achieved his purpose, he turned tail and ran for his life, waiting for the perfect moment. He quickly signaled Lucio to use the god's Thunderbolt Stone to attack the mermaids. The damage from that item was so intense it triggered a massive explosion. The shockwave blasted the entire shrine into rubble. Luckily, Ha-jun and Lucio managed to dash out just in time. If they'd been any slower, not even their shoes would be left. Initially, Ha-jun's target was just the mermaid queen, but after hearing about that brutal plan, he changed his mind and decided to send the whole lot of them to the afterlife to avoid any desperate counterattacks. But life isn't a fairy tale. Just as they were about to celebrate their victory, the mermaid queen suddenly rose from the grave and grabbed Lucio's leg. Naturally, she was purple with rage after being played like a fool by Ha-jun. She retaliated by trying to swallow Lucio whole. The moment Lucio was about to end up in her stomach, Ha-jun didn't hesitate for a second and unlocked a new skill on his protective suit. He lunged forward and punched her right in the face. "Eat this, you bitch!" Finally, he managed to save the little one from the jaws of death. Thanks to the earlier explosion, Ha-jun also successfully leveled up, pushing his gear to Phase 2. Honestly, even Ha-jun couldn't believe he had such overwhelming power. Just one punch to subdue that mermaid queen. However, in the blink of an eye, she vanished from their sight. The mermaid took advantage of her aquatic environment to close the distance. Catching them off guard, she leaped out and grabbed Ha-jun. Her speed was so fast they couldn't even react. By the time they realized what was happening, it was too late. Ha-jun was dragged under the water. It looked like she intended to drown him until he logged out for good. But the main character isn't going to just kick the bucket, is he? Just as he was 1 foot into the grave, the author granted him the power of a flashback. But unlike other protagonists who reminisce about love, a family, or friends to gain strength, our guy here flashed back to his life at the bottom of the social ladder as a broke loser. Thinking about the fancy apartment he'd just bought, which he barely lived in, and the huge amount of money in his account that he hadn't finished spending, he was even more determined to survive. Perhaps driven by his strong survival instincts, Ha-jun awakened the hidden power within the Ares staff and turned to give the mermaid queen a massive smackdown. He broke free from her grasp. He didn't stop there. Because Ha-jun's blood was boiling, he didn't give a damn about anyone anymore. Even this mermaid queen was nothing but a rusty nail in his eyes. He didn't even plan to run. He turned to fight her head-on. Or rather, he was one-sidedly slapping her around with some very loving smacks to the cheek. After a chaotic underwater brawl, Ha-jun finally resurfaced, posing like a total badass to celebrate completing this difficult order. It was a satisfying victory. In the end, they treated themselves to a delicious bowl of black bean noodles that tasted like heaven. In reality, Ha-jun faced many difficulties at first, but thanks to the help of that little troublemaker Lucio, he managed to defeat the entire mermaid tribe, especially that intense underwater solo against the queen. Luckily, thanks to some divine light and the author buffing him with that flashback power, Ha-jun was able to turn the tide and give that hag a beating. Otherwise, he'd have been pushing up daisies a long time ago. To celebrate this occasion, Ha-jun decided to spend money like a high roller, generously letting Lucio choose whatever she wanted to eat to her heart's content since he'd made a massive profit anyway. Even after deducting the 150,000 points he'd spent on items earlier, he still came out on top. A bit bored, Ha-jun realized that orders involving combat with monsters seemed to pay way more than standard delivery jobs. Thinking about that, he suddenly remembered the hunter test flyer he saw at the convenience store. I guess a delivery guy and a hunter aren't so different after all. After a full meal at the restaurant, the two of them carried their full bellies home to rest. However, Ha-jun had just barely laid his head down, not even getting a moment of peace. Disturbed by the doorbell, he figured it was probably just the neighbor dropping by to say hello. But when he opened the door, he was shocked to realize who was standing right in front of him. Seeing Seo-jun wearing sunglasses, a face mask, and a hoodie pulled low looking exactly like a neighborhood creep, he froze solid, not even waiting for Seo-jun to speak. He slammed the door shut and hid inside. Little Lucio, who was inside, heard the commotion and popped his head out to ask what was going on. Ha-jun could only feed the little lady some nonsense. Saying it was nothing but Seo-jun being ignored outside, didn't give up. Instead, he brazenly pounded on the door, shouting, "I know who you are. Lee Ha-jun, you're the courier for the gods, aren't you?" As soon as he heard the guy hit the nail on the head regarding his identity, Ha-jun couldn't hold back and opened the door to confront him face to face. Good thing he opened the door when he did. If he had been even a second later, that hot-headed guy would have smashed his massive fiery divine sword right into his house. At this point, Ha-jun was completely baffled. He couldn't wrap his head around how on earth Seo-jun managed to find his home address. However, to Seo-jun, that didn't matter nearly as much as recruiting Ha-jun into his hunter team. So the moment they met, he bluntly expressed his intentions right then and there. Before they could discuss anything in detail, Seo-jun handed Ha-jun an envelope as a gesture of sincerity, hoping he would accept it. It looked thin, but inside was actually a check worth 500 million won. Ha-jun initially didn't want to engage with Seo-jun, but upon holding that golden check in his hand, he reluctantly sat down with him. "I'm only agreeing to talk to you because I see how sincere and friendly you are, okay? It's definitely not because of this 500 million won check." Seeing the broke guy had taken the bait, Seo-jun didn't beat around the bush and went straight to the point. He came to find him this time, to recruit a talent like Ha-jun into his hunter team. Rich people don't nag. Instead of introducing the work environment or the colleagues, Seo-jun laid it out clearly. Ha-jun's base salary if he joined the team would be 300 million won a year, with bonuses falling around 200 million won annually. And that's not even counting the other benefits. Ha-jun heard that and was absolutely stunned. Hunters really are the kings of all professions. While Ha-jun stood there frozen for a few minutes, Seo-jun was feeling just as tense because according to what Do-jun had said earlier, Ha-jun didn't seem like someone with a burning passion for becoming a hero hunter. He wasn't even desperate enough to have any certifications or any documents related to the hunter industry. So Seo-jun knew it would be quite difficult to persuade him to join the team. After weighing the pros and cons, Seo-jun felt that a talent like Ha-jun was a rare find that was hard to let go. So he decided to offer as many benefits as possible to entice him. He thought there was no way Ha-jun could refuse such a massive amount of money and the perks on the table, so he felt quite confident at first. He was sure he'd seal the deal, but who would have guessed Ha-jun did a complete U-turn at the last minute and rejected Seo-jun's offer, leaving him totally petrified. Ha-jun was even so determined that he took the little troublemaker Lucio and started walking straight home, without a hint of hesitation, even as Seo-jun tried to chase after him to keep convincing him. Still, Ha-jun firmly refused, then opened his app to select Teleport to leave, leaving Seo-jun standing all alone in the middle of the street. After the chase, just when it seemed like Ha-jun had reached a dead end and stopped, he held up his ringing phone. "Notification, you have a new delivery request." Ha-jun smiled triumphantly and said, "A delivery order. Obviously, I'm taking it." Just as he finished speaking, he hit the accept button without a second thought. Immediately, a powerful blue light erupted from the phone, blinding Seojun. This light, it was exactly like the one he had seen in the Hell dungeon. He tried to get a look, but only saw a blurry figure. Seojun's eyes widened in shock. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. The smoke gradually cleared, and Hajun had vanished into thin air in the blink of an eye, leaving Seojun stunned. He's really gone. Scene changed to a desolate mountain area. Lucio panicked and asked Hajun, "I thought you said we were supposed to have the day off, Hajun." Sweat poured down his face in the scorching sun as he panted. "Yeah, that was the plan. What kind of heartless jerk placed a delivery order from the top of a mountain?" Hajun yelled in frustration, and with that, his voice echoed across the peak. He panted heavily while checking the info on his phone, thinking that normally, when he accepts a request, he gets teleported directly to the delivery starting point, but today, instead of that, he got dropped off at the foot of the mountain. The little one behind him didn't stop mocking him. "Great job!" This is the consequence of blindly accepting every request without checking the details. Hajun gritted his teeth in annoyance and admitted his mistake. "I know, but I couldn't get out of there fast enough." He angrily cursed to himself, never imagining that Park Seojun from the One Guild would appear at his front door. Who would have thought he'd want to recruit him like that? Hajun struggled to find a way out while thinking to himself. Besides, there was a signing bonus of 200 million won and a base salary of 300 million won. Anyone would jump at an opportunity like that. But he hadn't even truly awakened, and it would be useless to try and trick them because sooner or later they would find out that all his items had limited durations anyway. Hajun thought, then tiredly pushed the idea aside. "Forget it. I'm never going to do menial work for a guild when I can make so much money like this." After just a few deliveries, that guy could have just taken that offer and vanished. He trudged heavily up the mountain step by step until the system notification suddenly rang out. "You have arrived at your destination." Hajun let Lucio sit on his shoulders, panting as he muttered, "We finally made it." The little lady looked listless in the sweltering heat, whining, "Who on earth chose this place?" But then his eyes flashed with surprise at the sight before him. Hajun screamed internally, "What the hell is this?" The air was thick with death, and the slimy purple corpses of monsters lay scattered everywhere. Lucio was mid-sentence when she suddenly panicked. Hajun finally, What is that?" The little lady hovered in the air, showing her frustration as she shrieked, "What on earth is going on here?" He ventured deeper inside, replying, "Don't ask me, I just got here myself." Hajun's boots barely touched a puddle of slime, sending it splattering everywhere. He couldn't avoid walking through the gunk strewn across the ground. He couldn't help but think to himself, "I remember this nauseating feeling all too well." But strangely enough, it was oddly addictive, almost like walking on snow. These were signs of the multi-tentacled monster he had encountered in the Hyani dungeon. Hajun curiously asked the little lady, "Lucio, in Greek mythology, is there any monster that looks like this?" Lucio answered with absolute certainty, no. Lucio had never heard of or seen anything like it before. Actually, it seems the little lady hadn't even finished her sentence before a massive tremor shook everything, making the two of them tense up and wonder if it was an earthquake. A blood-curdling screech erupted from a giant, ferocious monster right behind Hajun. He didn't even notice until the tentacles were nearly upon him. Once they realized it, they both screamed in terror, thinking they had wiped all of those things out. Suddenly, a dark shadow zoomed past. It was a god with a muscular physique soaring quickly over the monster's head. He let out a loud roar and lunged down, throwing a punch toward the beast. A massive earth-shattering explosion occurred, sending debris flying everywhere. Hajun tried to shield himself, but the light from the blast was too blinding to see anything. He gasped, "What on earth was that?" As the hazy smoke cleared, the silhouette of that god appeared, groaning uncomfortably. "Oh man, my back. I guess I'm getting too old for this kind of stuff. My body just isn't what it used to be." He glanced over at Hajun and Lucio. It was Hercules himself, and he looked genuinely happy to see them, saying, "So you're the one." The man he had heard so much about, Hajun, stared at his imposing physique and whispered to himself, "He's huge. Is he my client this time?" Suddenly, Lucio let out a surprised cry. "It's him! He's—" Hajun asked hurriedly, "You know him?" The little lady immediately replied, "Can't you tell who that is?" Lucio began his introduction. The man who completed all 12 labors assigned by the goddess Hera, earned immortality, became a god, and led the gods to victory. Against the giants, the great hero of Olympus, he is the hero of heroes, Hercules. Hearing the little lady's introduction, Hercules spoke up, feeling a bit shy. "It feels like ancient history now. You're making me blush." Hajun was stunned, deducing, "Wait, so does this mean he's the one who shot the poisoned arrow at Karen?" "I've heard about what you did for my teacher. Karen, you helped her heal her leg," Hercules said while stepping closer, but Hajun instinctively backed away in fear, answering, Ah, right. But actually Hydra was the one who healed Karen. Hercules laughed loudly. I'm incredibly grateful, thank you, friend. He even gave Hajun a pat on the back so hard his whole body shook, and an urgent system notification pinged. Warning suit cannot withstand such impact. Hajun was shocked by the sheer force he thought, man, he's as strong as a bull. Hercules formally introduced himself. Anyway, let me introduce myself properly. I am Hercules. In the past, I was a demigod. But now, as this little fairy says, I have become a legend dedicated to protecting Olympus. Hajun's back ached from the hit, and he couldn't stop patting it while complaining. But he also introduced himself. Ow, my back! My name is Lee Hajun. The little lady beside them excitedly chimed in. Lucio's name is Lucio. It's a pleasure to meet you, Lord Hercules. Now that they all knew each other's names, he got straight to the point. Lee, Hajun, and Lucio. I called you here today because I have something I want you to look into for me. And what would that be? As soon as he asked, Hercules turned and pointed in another direction. Look there. During the Gigantomachy, that door became a gateway for monsters to invade Olympus. Lately, there has been a sharp increase in the number of tentacle monsters appearing from it. Where Hercules pointed was a cave entrance, emitting a blinding golden light, along with countless globs of monster slime. Hajun looked at the squirming pile with disgust as it made tiny squeaking noises. He continued, I've never seen these creatures in this area before, and judging by their form, I have a feeling this might be an invasion from another world. Hercules hesitated for a moment before kicking the pile of slime. Hearing the wheezing sound from the monster after his explanation, Hajun also worriedly thought, I wonder if the dungeon entrances back at Heen have anything to do with this? Hercules said seriously, My request is simple. Just investigate where these monsters are coming from. At the same time, a system chime rang out. New quest: investigate why monsters are invading Olympus through that gate. Time limit 24 hours. Warning: failure to complete delivery or canceling the order will result in a divine penalty. Reward 200,000 points. After reading the second notification, he thought to himself, Am I even being hired to do detective work now? Tempted by the money, Hajun still cared about his own life more. That's a pretty big reward, but I should probably turn this job down. He glanced at Hercules' body still covered in so many scars from past battles, and Hajun immediately dropped the thought of refusing, bowing respectfully. Of course, sir, I'll get to the bottom of this in no time. Hajun chuckled inwardly. Well, whatever. Since the first time I set foot on Olympus, I've already said goodbye to my days as a normal delivery guy. Hearing a satisfactory answer, Hercules laughed heartily. I like your spirit. You're just as my wife Hebe described. Hajun asked, stunned. Your wife is Hebe? It was then that Hajun realized the beautiful goddess he first met on Olympus was actually the one who had hired him for his first divine delivery quest. She is Hercules' wife. He also passed along a message for Heber. My wife asked me to apologize to you on her behalf if I ran into you for having suspected you like that. I understand her, so I'm not taking it to heart. Laughs loudly. It's nothing, really. It's just a small matter. Please tell her I haven't given it a second thought. Hajun thinks to himself, it's truly fascinating how complicated things in Greek mythology can be. A notification sound interrupts their conversation, guiding them to their destination. He checks the map on his phone, confused. Wait, there's something a bit strange about this map. Lucio, curious, flies over. What's going on? According to the map, it says we have to head in that direction. Hajun walks toward the cliff edge, not the gate that was pointed out. Hercules speaks up to confirm, that's right, it's pointing you the right way. He can't believe his ears and shouts, what was that? Let me help you get there fast in a split second. Before he can finish his sentence, he has already lifted Hajun while Hajun holds on to Lucio tight. Their faces turn pale as they scream in protest. Wait, no, oh my God, no way. Hercules flings them away at a terrifying speed. Good luck to you both. He holds the little fairy tight as she wails, secretly swearing vengeance. Hercules, I will get you back for this. Scene shifts to a modern high-rise building. Rushing footsteps echo through the halls. Doyun bursts through the door calling for President Seojun, who is focused on his computer, and scolds him. Hey, come on now, you can't just barge into my office like that. He pouts and shouts back, but I need to report on how your conversation went. Did he agree? He replies dejectedly, no, he completely turned me down. He didn't even seem to care about what I was saying. Doyun is shocked and wonders, why? But why? That's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He seems to have lost the game. The computer screen displays the words, you are dead. Seojun explains, who knows? He left very quickly. After he said he had to go deliver something, Doyun feels it makes no sense and replies, oh, come on. You just let him walk away like that? That was clearly just an excuse. I don't know. Doesn't seem like it was just an excuse, not this time. Seojun rests his chin on his hand, deep in thought. He was in the dungeon of Heen. Dungeon for delivery. After everything happened, Ares even sent me a special message. At that moment, he clearly remembers a message from the godly sword. The god Ares confirmed he sent this item. He also said he asked Lee Hajun to deliver the sword. Seojun stares back at the game on his computer. He reassures Doyun, anyway, don't worry. I will keep trying to recruit that divine courier. Into our guild? By the way, is there any update on the tasks I assigned to you? After receiving the divine weapon that Ares asked Hajun to deliver to me, I stopped using my backup sword, so I put it up for auction 2 days ago. Initially, I intended to use that money to pay for Hajun's contract fee, but that's not going to happen now. Seojun still remembers the cunning, smug face of Hajun flipping him off. Doyun suddenly asks, "Didn't you receive the report?" A bidder from Japan expressed interest and wants to buy it, so we've arranged a time. He is extremely surprised by this result. Really? Then I guess we'll have to start preparing soon. Lately, there's been an issue regarding inter-guild transactions leading to a series of thefts that are becoming more frequent. From time to time, we receive reports about high-value goods being stolen during transport. Since my sword is quite valuable, if possible, I should consider hiring a mercenary. Even just the thought of transport makes Seojun hesitate. Wait a second, an idea flashes through his mind. Seojun immediately recalls the first time he met Hajun. When he delivered the sword, he said he was a delivery person. He smiles slightly and says, "I think I have an idea." Back to the scene where Hajun and Lucio are thrown mercilessly by Hercules. The two of them fall at high speed toward the deep abyss. He feels full of resentment and screams. Why did he have to throw us like that? The little fairy with the wind blowing into her mouth can't speak clearly and can only emit screaming sounds. The notification from the delivery system suddenly pops up. Approaching destination. Hajun, bewildered, blurts out, "And where is that?" He is completely confused in his mind. Is our destination really the bottom of this abyss? At this speed, we're going to break every bone in our bodies. He immediately summons the scooter he uses for deliveries. It appears like a life raft. Once he has it, Hajun confidently rides the scooter straight down into the abyss. Just a little further, the vehicle slammed into the ground with a massive impact, triggering a huge explosion and sending dust billowing everywhere. As the smoke cleared, he slowly came into view. Coughing as he choked on the dust, Hazun realized the scooter was still in one piece, as if the crash had never happened. Thank goodness, he thought. Thank God I actually spent the money on this scooter. It really saved us. He hurried to shake the little girl who was still slumped unconscious in his arms. "Lucio, wake up, we're on the ground now." The little girl replied groggily, "Lucio, I don't know how much longer I can take this." A moment later, they both fully came to their senses and surveyed the situation. Hazun sighed in frustration. "There's nothing here at all. What exactly are we supposed to be looking for? How are we even supposed to get back?" Lucio asked. "Didn't Hercule give you any information?" He felt a surge of resentment and started venting, unaware that a massive foot had appeared right behind him. "He didn't tell me a single thing. That impatient idiot just threw us down here." A massive tremor shook the ground, cutting their conversation short. Both were stunned, and Hazun asked in a panic, What's happening?" Lucio clung to his leg, trembling, and said, "It feels like an earthquake, with all this shaking. What if there's a monster here? Just like the one we saw up there. We could die and no one would ever find us." Paralyzed by fear, Hazun couldn't stop imagining the worst, silently cursing the person who gave him this mission. "Hercule, a mysterious character," a voice boomed from right behind them. "Did you just say the name Hercule?" The stuttering, terrified call made him turn around. Standing right in front of Hazun was the silhouette of a giant, freezing him in his tracks. "Oh my God, what is that thing?" The giant loomed like a threat to them both. Hazun's eyes went wide with shock. "Why is there a giant here? He's as huge as the 8 trigrams at Mount Hua." The giant god repeated his question. "How do you know Hercule?" Hazun cursed under his breath, wondering what trouble that bastard had caused in these mountains. Hazun forced a smile, explaining, "Actually, Hercule just hired me to investigate why monsters are appearing on the mountain peaks. He told me I could find the cause here." The giant god let out a booming laugh. "Monsters!" The laugh echoed, followed by a blinding flash of light. The giant was none other than Atlas. He scoffed, "That fool! Things must be pretty bad up there if he's in such a rush that he'd send someone like you to find me." Hazun marveled at Atlas's appearance as he saw him more clearly. A giant holding a giant ball. He chuckled to himself. Oh man, it's actually kind of satisfying to see him in such a tight spot. He thought, I get what's going on now. If you know anything, could you tell me? Atlas looked stunned. What? Why on earth would I share anything with you? Anything at all would help me get rid of that bastard. He was taken aback by this lack of cooperation. He thought, why is he being so uncooperative? Hazun whispered to Lucio, who was hiding behind him, trembling. Do you have any idea why he's so worked up? The little girl replied, Are you serious with that question? He's been the giant carrying the celestial sphere, Atlas, for a long, long time. During the great war between the giants and the gods known as the Titanomachy, the giants lost. As punishment, Atlas was forced to hold up the celestial sphere. He's forced to hold it up because his hands and feet are chained. Since Hercule is the son of Zeus, there's definitely some bad blood between them. The little girl guessed the reason. Why Atlas wouldn't cooperate? Listening to this, Hazun growled in frustration, inwardly blaming Hercule. He should have mentioned that if there's that much drama between them, why are all the gods I know such selfish jerks? Just thinking about that heavy shove of his was enough to make him go insane. Just then, Atlas, having listened to everything, finally spoke up. Are you two done yet? Hazun jumped in alarm, but forced a smile. You heard all of that, he continued nonchalantly. As the legends say, whether or not monsters are invading the outside world, that is not my concern. Hazun cursed inwardly. Damn it, I didn't expect this curveball. If I can't get this giant to talk, this delivery is a total bust. I'm going to have to face the wrath of the gods. Hazun immediately changed his attitude. From fearful to boot-licking, he pleaded, Oh, come on! Mr. Giant, can you really say no to a face like this? Atlas saw right through your intentions, so quit it already, you're making me want to puke. Hajun sighed. How ruthless. Then quick on his feet, he suggested, I'm not asking for information for free. I can give you anything in exchange. I'll do whatever you demand. Hearing that, Hajun pointed to himself with a confident grin. Atlas was taken aback by the offer and stammered, What? Lucio was so worried he started stuttering. Hajun, you're being way too reckless. Hajun replied calmly, Well, what other choice do I have? The giant let out a mocking laugh. Anything you say, you're just a regular human after all. What makes you think I'd trust you? Anything I say, really? Hajun wasn't angry. On the contrary, he grew even more confident. You'll never know unless you try. I might just surprise you. Atlas was so intrigued by his attitude that he praised him. You've certainly got guts, human. I'll consider that a compliment. In that case, go get me a golden apple. Hajun didn't expect that request. A golden apple? The giant grinned smugly, laying out the challenge. If you can retrieve a golden apple without crossing the river Styx, then you might actually be worthy of knowing what those slimy monsters are plotting. Hajun racked his brain trying to remember where he'd heard of that before this deal. A golden apple? Where have I seen that before? Beside him, little Lucio screamed, trying to stop him. No, that's impossible, Hajun. You can't agree to this. The golden apple is a rare fruit that only grows on the tree given to Hera as a wedding gift. As Lucio was explaining how to get it, Hajun suddenly remembered where one was and immediately covered Lucio's mouth. He asked Atlas one more time, Is that really all you need? Ignoring the muffled noises coming from the struggling Lucio, the giant laughed heartily and confirmed with conviction, a single golden apple is enough to satisfy the honor of a giant. I promise you. Come on, Atlas, be a man and swear by the river Styx. Hajun, just as sly, ignored Lucio's frantic protests. Atlas, amused, held up his pinky and said, You're certainly a funny one. Fine, I'll play along. I swear on the river Styx. You have my word. They're happy. Now, you can't back out of it. As soon as he said that, Hajun pulled out his phone, thinking smugly, I was wondering why that sounded so familiar. With a single tap, the system's shop interface appeared with various items. Golden apple, 1,000 points. Wooden kite, 5,000 points. Lead arrow, 10,000 points. Golden arrow, 50,000 points. He looked at the price list, thinking, so I can just buy one from the shop. Without hesitation, Hajun tapped on the golden apple and a notification popped up. Golden apple purchased. 1,000 points deducted. Current balance, 637,700 points. There it was. In the blink of an eye, a golden apple appeared in his hand. Hajun held it up arrogantly. Lucio was left speechless, jaw dropped. Atlas was stunned, breaking into a cold sweat. You've got to be kidding me, right? Scene shift to the mountain peak littered with slime. After crushing the last monster, Hercules let out a sigh of relief. Finally done. I wonder how long it'll take Hajun and Lucio, though getting info out of that grumpy Atlas won't be easy. He glanced toward the abyss where they had descended to meet Atlas. Hercules pondered, did I even mention Atlas to them? But he quickly shrugged it off and laughed. Well, they'll find him eventually. Hercules didn't notice the blinding blue light suddenly erupting from the abyss behind him. Attracted by the glow, he turned around confused. It wasn't just a blinding light. There was the roar of a motorcycle engine, too. Hercules stood frozen as Ha-Jun's bike shot out from the depths. He screamed at the top of his lungs, "It was so hard to get out of there!" The bike's acceleration suit synced up with 3 seconds left on the clock. Both Ha-Jun and Lucio looked pale as ghosts. Hercules stood on the ground, clapping relentlessly. Nice a great opening act. Suddenly, a tire came flying toward him, wiping the smile off his face. Needless to say, it slammed right into Hercules' face, sending him sprawling to the ground. Ha-Jun's face went white, looking haggard as he cursed, "Holy!" In a rolling, hilly area as the sun began to set following the collision between Ha-Jun's delivery bike and Hercules, Ha-Jun, and Lucio knelt down, sincerely apologizing. "I am truly sorry, sir. Please forgive this one's recklessness." Hercules laughed loudly, reassuring them. "It's fine, like I could be hurt by that, right?" Ha-Jun stammered, terrified. But your face." Hercules' face was now swollen on one side, his left eye completely shut. Yet he still smiled and asked, "What about my face?" "It's totally wrecked and you're bleeding all over the place," Ha-Jun thought, but he didn't dare say it to his face. Hercules sighed, looking disappointed. "Looking at the situation, and it seems Atlas didn't tell you anything at all. Maybe I assigned this job to a fool from the start." He seemed to still be bitter about the time he took those golden apples. He sighed, remembering the past. Back then, Atlas had turned bright red with rage because Hercules had stolen his golden apples. The giant had roared, "Stop right there!" But Hercules just laughed, teasing him, "Eat my dust." Hercules grumbled to himself. After all these years, he's still as petty and childish as ever. He grew quiet and said, "Even though you failed, I'll let the punishment slide." Ha-Jun, still obediently kneeling with Lucio, spoke up. "Actually, he already told us everything." Hercules was shocked he couldn't believe his ears. He asked skeptically, "What was that? You're talking about that grumpy guy. You actually got him to tell you everything." He reached behind his back and pulled something out. "Well, sir, see for yourself. He was actually quite eager to answer all my questions once I showed him this." Ha-Jun held up a golden apple and answered nonchalantly. Hercules couldn't believe his eyes. A mere mortal like him actually had it. "A golden apple? Where did you get that?" Ha-Jun laughed heartily and recounted the story. Flashback to before his return, Ha-Jun had arrogantly held up a golden apple in front of everyone's stunned faces. Even Atlas couldn't hide. Surprise was written all over his face. "No, this is impossible. How on earth do you have that in your inventory?" Ha-Jun didn't hesitate to explain, "Oh, I just clicked on the shop and bought it." Atlas rushed to make an offer. "I'll answer all your questions, but give me that apple first." Ha-Jun wasn't about to be fooled by Atlas, so he shook his head and refused. "Not so fast. How do I know you won't scam me? First tell me why those monsters appeared, and then this apple will be yours." He danced around, dangling the apple that Atlas so desperately craved. Atlas wasn't pleased and retorted, "That's not what we agreed on. I even swore on the river Styx just like you wanted." Seeing he wasn't getting what he wanted, Ha-Jun pretended fine then. "If that's the case, I guess I'll just eat this apple myself." Atlas, of course, couldn't resist and compromised. "Wait, no. All right, I'll tell you." Once he finished talking, I just ran off with the apple. Ha-Jun retold the story with confidence, almost like he was bragging about a feat. Hercules finally understood the situation and remarked, "So you're the one who tricked him, not the other way around, right?" He glanced at the guy sizing him up. He knew this wasn't just some ordinary young man, especially since he had been able to heal his master's foot. He chuckled happily. "I managed to save 1,000 points. The little girl beside him asked curiously, "Can you make candy out of that golden apple?" The fire of youth in Hercules' heart seemed to be reignited by him. His eyes lit up, but this bold, reckless attitude really reminded him of his own younger days. "He's starting to look more and more like me." He was excited to finally get the answers he had been searching for all this time. "So what did he say? Where did those monsters come from?" Ha-Jun put the golden apple away and answered calmly, "It's hard to explain. He just kept rambling about a bunch of nonsense." Hercules asked anxiously, "Just give me the summary. What did he actually say?" All right. The ground cracked into 7 parts and there were blue flames flashing here and there. He said that's where they escaped from." Ha-Jun spoke seriously, confirming exactly what Atlas had said, and that piece of information helped him realize something. Hercules swallowed hard, deep in thought. "This seems much more serious than I imagined." Just looking at them from the outside, he could tell the monsters came from another world, and it's definitely from that place. He stared at the pile of slime on the ground with a wary look. Hercules muttered to himself, "If I recall correctly, this guy is Lee Ha-jun. He has the ability to move freely between the mortal realm and any other mythical world without any obstacles. Could it be fate that a fairy is traveling with a human? Is this destiny?" He looked at the little girl beside him. Hercules had already guessed who was behind this and blamed them. The three fates are truly cruel. How could they force a human to carry such a heavy burden? Suddenly, Ha-jun reached out his hand in front of Hercules, leaving him completely confused. "What are you doing?" He smiled craftily and replied, "Come on now. Do I really have to spell it out for you? I've finished my part of the deal. Time to pay up." Ha-jun's expression became very sly as he made his demand. A moment later, Hercules stood looking into the distance at the pile of slimy monster carcasses, lost in deep thought as he gazed at the sky. Hercules was startled when a voice rang out from behind him. "So what do you think of him now that you've met him in person? He's quite useful, isn't he?" The person asking was a god, Hermes, who looked quite youthful. Hercules was happy to see him and said, "Greetings. I hope you're having a good day. How long have you been standing there, Hermes?" He waved back warmly. "I just got here right after the two of them left." "But do you have to be so stiff and cautious with me all the time, Hercules? I don't like it when we have to be so formal." He stomped his foot in frustration. That put him in a very awkward position. Hercules quickly explained, "I can't help it, especially after you helped me complete my 12 labors." Hercules gripped his staff and replied, "You know I have to be extremely careful with everyone else. Because of that." Hermes continued, annoyed. "Especially Ares. I heard you've been trying your best to ignore him for the past few days." He broke into a sweat, clearly trying to avoid the topic. "That's his fault. He keeps bringing up the past to pick a fight with me. Just because he's older doesn't mean I have to respect him. He doesn't deserve it." Hermes angrily chided him, "You stubborn guy!" Then unexpectedly asked, "Are you still at odds with Atlas?" Hercules replied calmly, "Even though I really want to clear the air, it would be shameful for me to humble myself and go down there. After all these years. Besides, I'm not even sure if he'd want to talk to me anymore." Listening to his confession, Hermes silently wished the two of them could make up. But he understood it's very hard to forgive things like that. He decided to drop the subject. Instead, he turned back to the important matter at hand, the place Atlas had described to the young man. "It's the place we're thinking of, right?" He seriously reiterated Atlas's words. The ground split into 7 parts with blue flames flickering here and there, just as predicted. At the same time, the wings on his staff spread wide. "We should start getting ready." As soon as he finished speaking, the staff lifted Hermes into the air. He called down, "Before I go, I'm heading back to the temple now to report on everything that happened today." Hercules, not wanting to be a bother, tried to stop him. "You're already busy enough, let me go to the temple." Hermes quickly replied, "It's fine if you leave. Who's going to take care of that bunch? They're sprouting up over there. Besides, delivering news is my responsibility." He didn't hesitate to help. "See you later. Give my regards to your wife for me." Hercules took off instantly, and he happily called back, "You got it!" Now his gaze turned murderous. He spun around to face the slimy monsters and declared without hesitation, "Time to wipe these pests out." Shifting the scene back to the mortal world after finishing her mission, Lucio was so exhausted she collapsed into a deep sleep, even snoring comfortably. Suddenly, Ha-jun appeared out of nowhere. He forcefully yanked the blanket off the little lady to wake her up. "Hey, get up!" Lucio slumped on the mattress, groggily saying, "5 more minutes." He didn't put up with it and scolded her, "5 minutes. What are you talking about? I have to leave early. Get up and get ready now." The lazy little lady grabbed a soda can and muttered, "What's the rush? Is there something going on today, too?" Ha-jun sternly pointed a finger at her. "Did you forget? Today is the hunter qualification exam. You idiot, I told you to wait at home yesterday. But you were the one who insisted on tagging along." After chugging the cold soda, Lucio slowly woke up, rubbed her eyes, and replied, "Oh, right, I remember saying that now. But an exam for what?" He used a sarcastic tone to tease the little lady. "You don't even know what it is, and you still wanted to come along." Lucio shot back, "Because you're always trying to go off on your own. It's so boring. Besides, if Ha-jun isn't... And at home, who's going to cook for Lucio?" Ha-jun was furious and shouted, "What am I, your nanny?" "Whatever," he thought, digging into his backpack to check his gear. "Let's see. I've got my ID and registration slip. Better leave this staff behind so I don't stand out." Having said that, Ha-jun took away the wooden stick Ares had given her. The little lady just waking up. Her hair still a mess, excitedly chirped, "Ha-jun, Lucio is ready." He thought to himself, "Yeah, I bet you aren't. Put this on." With that, Ha-jun tossed a baseball cap at the little lady, making Lucio gasp in surprise. At a modern skyscraper, both Ha-jun and the little lady Lucio were completely overwhelmed by the scene before them. By now, many people had arrived to take the exam, each with different skills. Seeing them, the little lady perched on his shoulder asked curiously, "Ha-jun, are these people representatives of the gods?" Ha-jun explained, "Representatives. You mean hunters, the mysterious beings from what I've heard? Most of them here aren't warriors. They're just people with strong physiques." The announcer's voice suddenly boomed, "Now we will begin the hunter certification test. Candidate number 1, please step onto the arena." Just then, not only candidate number 1, but 3 dwarf monsters appeared growling. They let out a shriek and jumped to attack him all at once. He forcefully used his weapon to bash the monster on the head. Ha-jun watched and thought, only 3 small fries. Maybe it's to ensure safety it's hard to hold a real exam. I guess it's too risky to run a real test for safety reasons. Even an average person could take them down. Lucio, sitting in his lap, stared at Ha-jun with endless admiration, while Ha-jun calmly analyzed the test. It seems the point isn't whether they can beat them, but how they do it. I guess I'll have to rely on the suit's physical stats for now. But things aren't looking so smooth. After a while, the announcer called out, "Next up, candidate number 38, Ha-jun." He stood up, raised his hand, and said, "Here." It was his turn to step into the arena. Ha-jun smiled confidently, getting into his fighting stance, telling himself the goal is to pass the test without drawing too much attention. A system notification pinged, "Suit activated." Johan, one of the judges, watched him closely with a hint of suspicion. She kept her eyes locked on Ha-jun as he appeared on the arena floor. The announcer's voice boomed, "Candidate number 36, 2 minutes and 52 seconds. He made quick work of those small fries." Sitting in the stands, Ha-jun overheard the chatter and wondered if the guy was a melee-focused hunter. "He had incredible coordination," someone commented. Another replied, "Yeah, me too." "He must have trained hard long before he awakened," the chubby judge continued. "His strikes are decent, but he lacks a finishing blow. A hunter shouldn't waste that much time, just to take down 3 goblins." The judge next to him agreed. "Seems like there aren't any standout candidates this time." Suddenly, Duhan barked, "You old geezers, shut it for a second." She pouted, grumbling to herself, "They're so picky. It's just a recruitment drive for second-rate guilds." The crowd around them was already buzzing with whispers. "That's Duhan from the Black Dragon Guild. I can't believe she came here in person to scout for new hunters." Duhan frowned, thinking, how did it come to this? Only a short time ago, the Black Dragon Guild was still the second strongest in the country. We were untouchable, renowned, and powerful. But after that mess with the 8-headed monster, we lost so many major sponsors. Now I have to go out and recruit members myself. I just hope I can find someone with actual talent. She let out a weary sigh. The announcer's voice cut through the air again. "Next candidate number 38, Ha-jun." He stepped onto the arena with confidence. Up in the stands, Lucio cheered enthusiastically, "You can do it, Ha-jun!" Ha-jun shouted back, "Thanks for the support." Ha-jun got serious and took his stance against the 3 monsters. Even though they were growling, he knew that while passing the test was important, drawing too much attention would be a headache. "I'll do just enough to pass and nothing more. Here they come." The 3 goblins lunged at him all at once. The system warned, "Danger detected. Evasive maneuver recommended." Ha-jun dodged immediately as their sharp claws swiped through the air. He watched their movements, sizing them up. "Compared to the merfolk I fought before, these guys are way slower. Maybe I can dodge their attacks without even needing the suit." Johan stared at him, thinking, number 38's evasion is pretty impressive. There's something familiar about the way he moves. She pondered, trying to dig through her memories. Ha-jun threw a light punch to counter, forcing them back. He reminded himself, "Stay calm. Don't finish them off in one hit." He clenched his fist and sparks of lightning flickered around his hand. "Here goes!" He threw a powerful punch straight toward them. A blinding light erupted, followed by a massive explosion. Even Johan was startled by the force of the strike. Her eyes lit up. "He's exactly the person we've been looking for." Johan had set her sights on him. He was the one she wanted. Back in the waiting room, a woman's voice chimed in. "Mr. Lee, congratulations, you passed with the 3rd highest score in history. We look forward to your achievements." "As a hunter," the staff member announced happily. Ha-jun stood there awkwardly, holding the card in his hand. He looked at it with mixed feelings. "I knew I wouldn't lose. But why does this feel so hollow?" "So this is what it's like to really become a hunter." Lucio cheered with joy. "Ha-jun, you did great, but when are we going to eat?" Ha-jun gritted his teeth. Is food the only thing on your mind? He picked up the little one, who continued, Lucio is craving sweet and sour pork. Ha-jun sighed, walking away. We're in Gangnam. Let's find a place nearby. A woman's voice interrupted, grabbing their attention. Hello, Ha-jun. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Du-han from the Black Dragon Guild. She introduced herself formally. The name sounded familiar to him. Du-han from the Black Dragon Guild. Ha-jun remembered he had crossed paths with her during a delivery once. She's that crazy lady I saw at Hua Mountain, Johan continued, inviting him. I've been watching your combat test from the selection area. I must say your skills are truly impressive. Would you be interested in joining our Black Dragon Guild? I believe our guild has everything you need to grow. Ha-jun showed clear disgust and flatly refused, walking past her. No thanks, I'm good. It was the first time someone had ever rejected her invitation, and Johan gasped in shock. What? She panicked, blocking his path. Wait, the Black Dragon Guild wants to recruit you a new hunter. Ha-jun politely cut her off. I appreciate the offer, but for now, I have no interest in joining any guild. Du-han gritted his teeth, deep in thought. I really need someone like him right now. To bring my guild back to its glory days, I have to recruit him at any cost. She was heartbroken, practically on the verge of tears, as she shouted, 5 billion won! I'll pay you 5 billion won as a signing bonus, Du-han told himself. I'll just win him over with money, ha! June looked like he'd been frozen solid by her declaration, which made Du-han assume she had succeeded. It really worked. She repeated, 5 billion won, what do you say? She was tense, stammering, Yes, that's right, Du-han confidently guessed. Of course he wouldn't turn that down. That's more than enough to convince him. Just as she was basking in the thought that Ha-jun would agree, he poured a bucket of cold water on her. I didn't think. The Black Dragon Guild was so stingy. That's just pocket change. Are you a cheapskate or something? Du-han chased after him, arguing, Stingy, you clearly don't know anything about this industry. Offering that much to a rookie hunter is unheard of. Good luck finding another guild that offers as much as we do. Ha-jun replied calmly, Actually, I already found one. The John 1 Guild offered me 20 billion won. Isn't that the standard rate? That answer hit like a bolt of lightning, leaving Du-han stone-faced as he gasped, That much! She collapsed, defeated. I never imagined the John 1 Guild would be willing to pay that much to recruit a rookie. Ha-jun turned away, annoyed. He said to Lucio in his heart, Let's go, Lucio. The little one mimicked his serious expression, reminding him, Lucio wants to eat sweet and sour pork. Du-han watched his back, wondering, just who exactly is this guy? At a restaurant in the Gangnam district, the news on TV reported, Today a candidate caused a media storm by shattering records and achieving the third highest score in history in the hunter exam. Ha-jun watched, closely amused. Seriously, I only passed the exam an hour ago and it's already on the news. Ignoring Lucio, who was banging on the table in frustration, he quickly dismissed it and looked at the menu. Regret won't do any good. Hey, what do you want to eat, Lucio? The little one, holding a spoon and chopsticks in each hand, replied crankily, Lucio already said he wants to eat sweet and sour pork. Ha-jun spoke up, This is a casual diner, they don't have that here. The little one finally gave in to reality. Fine. Then what does Lucio want to eat that has meat? Lucio looked at the menu and pointed at a delicious-looking meat dish. Ha-jun raised his hand for the server. Excuse me, 2 portions of bulgogi, please. Suddenly the 2 orders were brought out the moment he finished speaking. Ha-jun was startled, asking, What, it's already here? But we only just ordered. He was shocked when the person who brought it wasn't a waiter but someone he knew all too well. Mr. Seojun smiled warmly, trying to butter him up. Isn't the service here great? The food was served so fast and the portions were huge. Ha-jun asked awkwardly, Are you stalking me even to the restaurant now and serving me my food? Seojun awkwardly sat next to Lucio, who was just focused on eating, and explained, I'm not stalking you. I just happened to see you here, and I thought we could eat together. As he ate his bulgogi, he tried to persuade him, If you're trying to talk me into joining your guild, my answer is still the same. This is actually pretty good. I have no interest in joining any guild right now. You kept that cheerful attitude while talking to him. Really? But I heard you just passed the hunter exam. Ha-jun quickly raised his hand to stop him. At the same time, he shouted, cutting Seojun off. Me becoming a hunter has nothing to do with anything. He frowned while eating. How tiring. I've already started getting a headache from all this attention. I'm getting that much, huh? Ha-jun reminded him once more. Anyway, I have absolutely no intention of joining any guild, so please drop it and leave me alone. I'm trying to eat here. I think there's a misunderstanding here. I'm not here to recruit you. Those words made his spirits perk up. Seo-jun continued deadly serious. The reason I came to find you, I'm here to hire you the divine courier. Ha-jun didn't expect this thinking hiring me. You explained further, we need to transport a package to Japan in the next 2 days. Usually we'd choose air freight and be done with it. But lately there's a notorious thief targeting our international shipments. I need your help to make sure this cargo arrives safely. Seo-jun's voice was pleading. Ha-jun rubbed his chin in thought while his other hand drummed on the table. He said loudly, transporting cargo is my specialty. Not to brag, but my service fee is pretty high. You smiled slyly. You're very generous and don't mind spending money, right? You declared, no problem. I trust that the price we offer will meet your expectations. Ha-jun asked bluntly, so what's the actual number? Let's see if this amount is reasonable. The old man Jun held up 2 fingers. Ha-jun looked annoyed and said, 200 million won, you've got to be kidding me. Are you joking? He immediately corrected himself. No, I meant 2 billion won. Enticed by the money, the man nodded in agreement. It's a deal, sir. I'll make sure your delivery is safe. The old man Jun chuckled with satisfaction. I knew I could put my trust in this legendary courier, and I trust you'll handle everything just fine. Elsewhere, little Lucio was eating happily, her face filled with pure bliss as she enjoyed such delicious food. She couldn't stop praising it. This is even better than sweet and sour pork. The human world is truly fascinating. Cut to evening on a balcony. Somewhere else. A woman sitting on the balcony declared, I'm ready to go. Give me that shipment, Hemet. The woman stared intently at the contents while the god Hemet stood by her side. It appeared through the tech system. Cut to a harbor filled with ships carrying various containers. Lucio stood on Ha-jun's shoulder looking around in awe. Ha-jun stared at the giant boxes on the ship and equally amazed replied, You're right, there are so many. I wonder if all of these belong to the John World Guild. He was stunned and thought to himself, I never imagined I'd be traveling on a cargo ship. This feels more like I'm a bodyguard than a courier. A security guard stopped them. Hold it, we need to check your ID. Which guild are you with? Ha-jun replied, Which guild? I don't belong to any guild. Ha-jun held up the powerful black card, leaving Lucio on his back in awe. The John World Guild hired me. They said as long as I show you this, you'd let me pass. The guard was shocked, thinking, a VIP card from the John World Guild. Both guards immediately bowed. Apologies, sir. That's enough for the security check. Ha-jun didn't really understand, but answered, all right then. Thanks. But he remained suspicious, thinking, what's up with them? The little one looked around and said, We're on a ship now. It's really huge. Seeing Lucio's dramatic reaction, he asked skeptically, Wait, aren't there a lot of big ships like this in Olympus? Like the expedition ship Argo, a hero and his company own the Argo. So of course it's massive. Every cargo ship is huge. Lucio proudly declared, making Ha-jun awkward. She really is a proud Olympian. Suddenly, his steps halted. Ha-jun stood in front of a large storage bay and said, Looks like this is the ship. This container stood out so brightly it was as if they were inviting thieves to take something from inside. Cautiously, he inserted the black card. The lock beeped, announcing, John World Guild access confirmed and authorized. As he opened the door, Ha-jun tensely swung it wide. He looked inside and exclaimed, No wonder they didn't bother to hide it better. How could anyone steal this with all these locks and chains? Inside, the sword was kept in a glass cage surrounded by iron chains. Ha-jun scanned the area thinking, I can see 10 locks just at a glance. I doubt there's a thief brave enough to try and steal this. Then he looked at Lucio, whose eyes were wide with disbelief as she stammered, That sword! Why is it here? You recognize this weapon? The little one gasped. Isn't it obvious? The golden blade emits a light that can blind evildoers with just one look. This is the legendary sword of Charlemagne. Durandal. Ha-jun sat on the floor saying, You sure know your stuff. I'm impressed. The little one responded excitedly. Well, of course, Ha-jun interrupted Lucio with a smirk. I knew you were a super fairy. That's right, Lucio asked. So what do we do now, Ha-jun? Ha-jun answered seriously. What do you mean? Our mission is to stand guard here and make sure nobody steals the sword until it's delivered safely. Don't fall asleep. Stay alert and keep watching the area. Remember there are 2 billion won riding on this delivery? He yawned as he gave the warning. The little one pouted and said, Lucio will never fall asleep on the job. Ha-jun said defensively, I know it might seem like a lot for one delivery, but if the sword is stolen, we have to pay them back many times that amount. No way I'm letting my guard down. I need to focus. The ship's whistle blew. Good. Looks like the ship is departing. Ha-jun joked, "Why don't we place a bet, Lucio? Whoever falls asleep first gets a flick on the forehead." The little one didn't back down and agreed, "Let's do it." Suddenly, a mysterious blue mist rose from somewhere. Outside the storage room, 2 security guards were on duty. The blue mist grew thicker. One guard inhaled it, became delirious, and muttered, "What's going on? Why am I suddenly so sleepy?" As soon as he finished speaking, he fell into a deep sleep, collapsing on the floor. It wasn't just him. All the other guards ended up in the same state. A light set of footsteps approached. Sayun appeared under the moonlight and softly announced, "Phase complete." The mist didn't just stay outside, it even seeped into the storage room. Ha-jun had inhaled it and was snoring away. Suddenly, a small hand appeared. It flicked his forehead hard, making Ha-jun grit his teeth in pain. Lucio anxiously shook Ha-jun. "Ha-jun, wake up! Ha-jun, wake up!" He rubbed his forehead, muttering, "Since when did I doze off?" The little lady hurriedly explained, "Just a moment ago, a strange mist spread throughout the ship, and then you and the entire crew passed out." He realized what the mist was, quickly covering his nose, thinking, "This isn't good. It's anesthetic gas." Ha-jun looked over and felt relieved to see the sword was still there. "Damn it, Durando, thank goodness you're safe." He hurried to open the cargo door to check the situation outside. Wearing this armor should have made me immune to things like this. Could this be the thief's skill? Ha-jun was stunned to see someone outside, wondering, "Who on earth is that?" Outside, Seo-yoon clasped her hands together and prayed, "Dear God, please grant me the strength to continue being a righteous thief today." She knelt on the floor with her eyes closed. He watched Seo-yoon, thinking to himself, "How ridiculous." Ha-jun called out to the system to open the shop, thinking, "If I catch that thief..." Hey, this counts as completing the delivery mission, right? Doesn't it? He tapped the screen, and at that same moment, a notification chimed. 10,000 points deducted. Transaction complete. Ha-jun felt confident. Now it's time to deal with her. Just then, Seo-yoon stood up and declared, "All right, it's time to take it." Before she could finish her sentence, a flash of light shot out and a glowing bundle of ropes coiled around her hands. Countless strands wrapped tightly around her body. Seo-yoon gasped in shock, thinking, "A rope. This isn't an ordinary rope. It's binding me so tight it's like I'm caught in a spider's web." She became even more alert. A loud laugh came from behind her. He gloated, "Looks like I've caught a thief." Lucio, standing beside him, eagerly chimed in, "Surrender." The thief Seo-yoon was confused by the appearance of the two. "Didn't I just knock everyone out? And who is that little girl with wings?" The item information appeared, Arash's thread. A mystical rope woven from the legendary threads of Arash, the master weaver, who once defeated Athena in a weaving contest. This rope will instantly bind any opponent it touches, tightening the more the captive struggles. However, it can be broken if used against those with overwhelming strength. He laughed with satisfaction at its function. "A rope that costs 10,000 points, more than enough to catch a petty thief like you. Who on earth are you?" Hearing his question, Seo-yoon felt indignant and welled up with tears. "That anesthetic was created by my god. How are you still conscious? And this rope? It must belong to a god." Ha-jun tapped her on the head as a warning. "You sure talk a lot. For a common thief." Seo-yoon immediately retorted, "I'm not a thief." She began to negotiate. "Let me go. I can explain. There's something here I need to retrieve." Ha-jun felt insulted and replied, "Do I look naive enough to just let you go? No. Obviously you came here to steal from the guilds." Seo-yoon had to admit it, but tried to defend herself. "Fine. I may be a thief, but I only take things that deserve to be taken. I do this for a higher purpose, I swear." Ha-jun obviously found it hard to believe. "You're even more delusional than you look. So is this how criminals justify breaking the law?" She shouted. "I'm not lying." Seo-yoon sputtered with frustration. "Have you ever heard of Robin Hood? He was a righteous robber, and that's exactly who I am. I take things that don't belong to anyone and return them to those who need them more." Ha-jun and Lucio were stunned by her confident claim. He rolled his eyes at the little lady beside him and said sarcastically, "I think she needs professional help." The little lady agreed, while Lucio thought, "This person doesn't seem quite right in the head." Seo-yoon shouted urgently, "Seo-yoon, believe me, Lord Hermes himself sent me to retrieve items that must be returned to their true owners to prepare for the coming threat." Ha-jun asked suspiciously. "Ha-jun," Lucio exclaimed excitedly. Lucio thought, could this person be a messenger of Hermes? He scrutinized her skeptically. A petty thief is a messenger of Hermes. He pressed the interrogation. Wait a minute. What threat are you talking about? Seeing they still didn't believe her, Seo-yoon wiggled her tongue, thinking I've said too much. At that moment, a pink marble was between her teeth. Seo-yoon said boldly, "This wasn't supposed to go this way." But I have no choice. You'll pay for getting in my way today. As soon as she finished, Seo-yoon bit down on it and a massive explosion occurred, forcing Ha-jun to step back. He cursed under his breath as the thick smoke obstructed his vision. Damn it, I can't see a thing in this smoke. It's thick smoke, but it's just a regular smoke bomb. She's still tied up in Arash's thread, so there's no way she can escape. Ha-jun thought nervously as the smoke began to clear. He was completely panicked when he saw Seo-yoon had vanished, leaving only Arash's thread behind. She escaped. But how? Not far from the cargo ship, she landed on the ground and lamented, "What a waste, those pills were expensive." Seo-yoon's entire body was enveloped in a blue light. Just then, a notification appeared. Alicia's mental transformation pill. When ingested, this type of Alicia temporarily makes the user invisible and intangible, helping them overcome any physical constraints. For a limited time, duration 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Seo-yoon the hunter wanted to cry, "I won't let you get away no matter what." That pervert wearing the riding suit. Nighttime at a quiet harbor. A lone figure walks by, the sharp rhythmic tapping of shoes against the ground echoing piercingly in the silence. Seo-yoon sighs heavily. That was seriously such a close call. A notification pops up. Mental transformation pill expired. She grinds her teeth, her face flushing with anger as she recalls the smug look on Ha-jun's face, that weirdo she ran into recently. He almost ruined everything. Who even is that pervert in the superhero suit? Suddenly, her system notification pings, grabbing Seo-yoon's attention. She reads it intently. The mischievous messenger is dying to know if she completed the mission. Seo-yoon replies immediately. Hemmet, things didn't go exactly as planned, but I did manage to get the item you requested. The Ring of Release, one of the mystical relics from the legends of King Arthur. The ring in her hand looks unremarkable at first glance, but begins to glow with a blinding light. It is the treasure of the Lady of the Lake, the one who gave King Arthur the sword Excalibur. I just couldn't believe it. A legendary artifact like that actually exists. Even someone as composed as Seo-yoon hadn't seen this coming. On the other end, after receiving her reply, the mischievous messenger responds again, sounding confused and demanding an explanation of what happened. Seo-yoon patiently explains, "You see, I used the sleeping gas you gave me when I boarded the ship, but there was one person who wasn't affected." The mischievous messenger insists firmly that the item provided to her was harmless. Another notification pops up as the mischievous messenger asks with a confused tone, "Who is that person?" She rests her chin on her hand, closing her eyes to think seriously. Let's see. He was wearing a skin-tight suit that was such an eyesore, and he was holding this strange rope that seemed to possess mysterious power. I was completely immobilized when he tied me up, so I had to use the pill you gave me. Ha-jun's smug face still haunts her. The mischievous messenger frowns. "These details sound familiar," the messenger asks. "Was there a child with him or someone else?" Seo-yoon thinks back and confirms, yes, he was with a cute little girl with blue hair. That was Lucio, his partner. She suddenly feels like something is off, thinking about it again. Wait, how did he know that exactly? Who is that guy? Is he someone important? The mischievous messenger chuckles at this unbelievable coincidence. The messenger reassures her, "Don't worry," explaining that this person is someone he personally selected. Seo-yoon lets out a sigh of relief. "So he counts as one of our people, then? I had no idea. What a relief." She suddenly feels